Chapter 1032. Professor He, that's how it is. I spent the whole night on the computer and still couldn't find anything. Gunyanji was a bit depressed. She had never encountered this kind of situation before. Hijichu coughed lightly and said to Gunyanji, "Nyenji, I wanted to ask you, are you familiar with the programming language Prolog?" Prolog? Programming in logic. Gunyanji quickly responded, "I know, but this programming language isn't widely used. It's still in the experimental stage." "Then do you know why it isn't widely used?" Hijichu seemed to be teaching Gunyanji a class to enlighten her. Prolog, also known as programming in logic as the name implies, is a programming language based on logic theory. It's also a type of intelligent program. Current computer hardware is limited and can't support the large-scale use of this programming language, so the actual use is basically zero. Right? Then what's the difference between it and normal programming languages? Hijichu looked up at the bright sunshine outside the window and squinted. "Oh, is Professor He testing me? Aren't you known as a genius computer expert? Let me see how well you've mastered the basics." Hijichu smiled faintly and lowered the curtains with his long, clean fingers. He walked to his desk and sat down to turn on the computer. Gunyanji giggled and said, "Okay, that's how I understand it. In normal programming languages, the programmer is the absolute leader. The lines of his code are clear and are all instructions to the computer. However, a logic programming language like Prolog sets logical rules for the computer and then allows the computer to determine how to proceed to the next step of the program based on the logic rules. For example, using a normal programming language for the computer to calculate a formula, the programmer teaches the computer to first multiply and divide, then add and subtract. The computer calculates strictly according to the calculation sequence set by the programmer. From this perspective, the computer executes the programmer's orders and will never make a mistake. The only thing that makes a mistake is the programmer writing the wrong program. However, a logic programming language like Prolog uses logical rules to process data. It's not as simple as adding and subtracting, then multiplying and dividing. The simplest logical relationship is like this. First set little red as a human, and little Lee is also a human, and the two of them like each other. Then give the judgment rule, people who like each other are friends. Then when you input little red likes little Lee and little Lee likes little red, the computer will conclude that they are friends. Then proceed to the next step of reasoning based on the relationship between friends." Hijichu nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad. That's the principle. However, this was the most basic description. Do you program in Prolog?" Gunyanji thought about it, then shook her head and said, "I've tried a few times, but I haven't done a systematic large-scale programming process." She had learned the most practical hacking techniques from Zhao Liangzi, which meant that she had studied the most widely used programs and had a thorough understanding of them. To put it bluntly, the essence of a hacker was the ability to crack. The most powerful hacker could crack all programs. As for the intelligent programming language, there was basically no practical use, so there was no need to crack it. Therefore, Gunyanji's understanding of this aspect was relatively shallow. "That's too bad. If you have the chance, use Prolog more often. Some problems won't be problems anymore," Hijichu reminded her subtly. Gunyanji didn't understand what Hijichu was implying. She shrugged and said nonchalantly, "But AI programming is closely related to computer artificial intelligence. Before artificial intelligence makes a breakthrough, these AI programming languages can only be used on a small scale. Why should we spend time on this? When artificial intelligence becomes popular, it won't be too late for me to research how to crack it." Hijichu shook his head disapprovingly. "Nyenji, as far as I know, this kind of AI programming language is already a semi-finished product in some countries' military laboratories. Do you know what it means to be a semi-finished product in the military?" Gunyanji was instantly stumped. Hijichu's status meant that Gunyanji couldn't ignore anything he said. Gunyanji suddenly realized something. She thought of the programming language Prolog that Hijichu had just mentioned. Although she only had a superficial understanding of it, this superficial understanding included the core rules of this intelligent programming language. Hijichu's hint also seemed to open the door to a new world in front of Gunyanji. She stared fixedly at the source code that she had been studying all morning on the computer and seemed to understand something. "Nyenji?" Hijichu didn't hear Gunyanji speak for a long time, so he called her worriedly. Gunyanji came back to her senses and said happily, "Professor He, you're amazing. I think I already found the problem. I'm sorry, I have to find the bug. When I find the bug, I'll treat Professor He to a meal." "Really? Don't try to fool me." A faint smile appeared on Hijichu's cold and aloof face. The smile was light and shallow, like the tiny ripples caused by scattered rain falling into a clear blue lake in spring. Gunyanji nodded quickly. I won't go back on my word. If I go back on my word, I'll grow into a big fat man. TSK, you're so hard on yourself. Even I'm afraid of you. Hijichu teased her briefly before hanging up. Looking at the computer in front of him, Hijichu thought for a moment and opened an infrequently used program. After Gunyanji hung up, she stared at the computer screen for a full half an hour. She sat there motionlessly like a clay statue. In fact, her mind was racing, thinking about how to use the intelligent logic programming language Prolog, and how to crack this intelligent logic programming language. However, the first step to cracking it was detection. Hijichu's words gave Gunyanji a new idea. What would happen if a normal program was mixed with Prolog or a programming language similar to Prolog? Could the bug that she and Zhao Liangzi couldn't find be related to the intelligent programming language Prolog? After another half an hour, Gunyanji finally thought it all through. She picked up the mouse, opened her programming notebook and began writing a program. This time, she modified her bug detection program to treat the intelligent programming language as a type of bug to search for. The basis of the search was that any source code that ran with logical settings was a bug. That was because normal programming languages never used logical settings to write source code. After the modification, she rechecked the source code that Zhao Liangzi gave her. This time, Gunyanji didn't sleep. She sat in front of the computer the entire time and watched her program run and search without blinking. She had to admit that the source code of the monitoring software that Zhao Liangzi gave her was truly amazing. Fortunately, the computer in her official residence was more powerful, so she could perform such high-load calculations and tests. Even so, it took her almost 12 hours to complete the entire test. She had her lunch and supper in her bedroom. For a whole 12 hours, Gunyanji didn't leave the house. Other than going to the door to get lunch and dinner from the orderlies, she barely left the computer. At 11 o'clock at night, her program finally chimed with a successful completion. She had never been so happy to see a big "done" appear on the computer screen. Gunyanji let out a long sigh of relief. She clicked on the program's error report and saw a few lines of instructions in the previously empty error check report. She instantly smiled. She had checked the program all night last night but couldn't find a single error. There was nothing in the error report, but Gunyanji wasn't happy at all. Now that she saw that there was a real error in the error report, she was overjoyed and speechless. Gunyanji read the error check report excitedly. The more she read, the more excited she became. F***CK. You can do that. You can actually set up a recursion program based on Prolog's intelligent logic programming language in a normal programming language. This is like inserting a Chunibu into a group of idiots who do one action at a time and secretly giving orders to the idiots. Gunyanji's heart surged and she couldn't take it all in. It was as if in the source code that only knew how to say 1 is 1, say 2 is 2, there was suddenly an additional code that told them that when 1 appeared they could stay where they were, and when 2 appeared they could return to 1. If it was neither 1 nor 2, then they would follow the original instructions. This was setting up a dead logic program between the established 1 and 2 situations. The key was using intelligent logic programming as a foundation, so this dead logic wouldn't become an endless loop of a virus program, so it wouldn't be discovered by the user of the software. That's amazing. Who's such a genius? Gunyanji couldn't care less about the middle of the night. She called Hijichu excitedly. Professor He, I found a bug. Someone really mixed a few lines of Prolog instructions into a normal programming language. Professor He, you're amazing. You're the genius. You're a real computer expert. Hijichu had just fallen asleep and was woken up by Gunyanji's call. He wasn't angry and smiled faintly. It's my honor to be praised by a computer expert. Gunyanji smiled happily. Professor He, you're too humble. This problem stumped many of us. I didn't expect you to see the essence of the problem so quickly. I want to ask you, how did you know this was the reason? You seem to be very proficient with computers. Hijichu's eyes flashed. He said calmly, I'm also standing on the shoulders of giants. I once sponsored a country's military laboratory and saw them do this kind of testing. Got it? Gunyanji knew which country Hijichu was talking about. She closed her eyes tacitly. It looks like we still have a long way to go to catch up. Not long either. Hijichu leisurely leaned against the bed. Actually, you said that someone suggested this problem was either a computer problem or a software problem. You've already pointed out the core of the problem. I believe that person will be able to figure out the crux of the problem as long as they think about it for a while. This was because only intelligent programming languages could truly drive hardware to serve software. Gu Nianji suddenly felt honored. Her Huaxiao was just that awesome. This was the third update of 3,100 words. It was also a big chapter. A reminder for the monthly votes and recommendation votes. The first update in the morning had 2 updates in one, so this was the third update. There's no problem. 233333. Chapter 1033. However, Gu Nianji had to admit that Hijichu, who was able to figure out the problem after hearing a few sentences, seemed to be a little more impressive. Gu Nianji finished praising Hua Xiaoheng in her heart and said to Hijichu, "But I have to admit, Professor He, you're still the best in this area. You're also so good at computers, so why did you study law? You should be a computer engineer and start your own business. With you around, Google, Chengdu, Amazon, Twitter, Facebook, and Weibo will all be defeated." Hijichu pursed his lips and chuckled. "You have a lot of confidence in me. Of course you're my mentor. If I don't have confidence in my mentor, wouldn't I be asking for it?" Perhaps Gu Nianji hadn't realized it herself, but Hijichu had already noticed that Gu Nianji was becoming more and more natural when talking to him. She was becoming more and more like her childhood self. In this world, only Hijichu knew how Gu Nianji had grown from a timid, autistic little girl who didn't even dare to speak to him, to a little girl who had no scruples in front of him. She was even bold and daring, a little girl who would directly confront him at the slightest disagreement. Although it had only been 6 years, those 6 years had established Gu Nianji's true personality and way of dealing with people. Now she was only gradually returning to the person she was 7 years ago, when she had just left him. That was his Nianji. He would never forget the way she looked like. Hijichu's hands clenched into tight fists and hung by his side. He resisted the urge to lock her by his side and never let go of her. She wouldn't like it. She wouldn't be happy. She wouldn't be willing. Hijichu could only silently repeat those 3 sentences to himself to calm himself down. "Thank you for your confidence in me, but my interest isn't in computers. And like I said, I'm only standing on the shoulders of giants. A certain country's military laboratory has already reached the semi-finished stage of using this programming language. I think some of you will be very interested in this information." Hijichu spoke casually as if he didn't know how valuable his words were. Gu Nianji knew, and she was extremely grateful. "Professor He, I understand. We'll work hard. But Professor He, won't you get into trouble by saying this?" Hijichu had multiple nationalities, one of which was American. Hijichu relaxed and laid lazily on the bed. "You're overthinking it. I didn't say anything. As for the prologue programming language that I mentioned just now, there are a lot of popular science on the internet. They are all the most basic things. As the saying goes, the master leads the way, but the cultivation depends on the individual. Whether they were smart or not depended on whose comprehension and creativity were stronger." Gu Nianji smiled knowingly and nodded. "Thank you for your guidance, Professor He. All right, I won't disturb your rest. Wait for my news, I will definitely treat you to a meal." "Okay, I'll be waiting." Hijichu hung up and turned off the lights, sinking into the darkness of the night. After calling Hijichu, Gu Nianji immediately called Zhao Liangzi. "Brother Zhe, what are you doing?" Gu Nianji's voice was filled with joy. Even through the phone line, Zhao Liangzi could hear it clearly. "I'm working. What else could I be doing?" Zhao Liangzi looked at the time. "You should be asleep at this hour, right?" Zhao Liangzi was in a 6-hour time zone away from Gu Nianji. It was 1 in the morning for Gu Nianji and 7 at night for Zhao Liangzi. Gu Nianji giggled and suddenly said, "Brother Zhe, I found the bug in the source code. I'm going to report it to Hua Xiao now." "Why?" She blocked Zhao Liangzi's number and began calling Hua Xiaoheng. Zhao Liangzi was dumbfounded. Gu Nianji found the bug. Gu Nianji found the bug in the source code. The bug that he couldn't find even after spending an entire day. "Nianji? Nianji?" Zhao Liangzi was so anxious that he immediately called Gu Nianji to find out what was going on. However, he couldn't get through to Gu Nianji anymore. She did it on purpose. This girl did it on purpose. Zhao Liangzi was hopping mad in his thatched hut on an island off the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, but that didn't stop Gu Nianji from communicating with Hua Xiaoheng. At this time, Hua Xiaoheng was still in the temporary command room of the Senate building. He was personally inspecting the connection systems between the various networks and the central control room. Ever since he had doubts about the surveillance software, Hua Xiaoheng also had doubts about the central control room's surveillance of the election. He couldn't explain the reason, but he sensed that something was wrong. Hua Xiaoheng's intuition for mistakes and danger was cultivated from over a decade of risking his life in countless imminent crises. He had been inspecting for a full 12 hours but still found nothing. Another election was coming soon. How could he guarantee that the voting for the election this time would be fair and just? Hua Xiaoheng's brows furrowed slightly as he continuously entered commands to conduct random inspections of the various surveillance systems. From the looks of it, there was indeed no problem at all. However, he also vaguely felt that the problem was not far from him. A sinister smile appeared on his face. Just when Hua Xiaoheng felt that he had reached a dead end, Gu Nianji's call came. The clear ringtone was like an epiphany that woke Hua Xiaoheng up completely. He accepted Gu Nianji's call and spoke to her through his Bluetooth headset. "Nianji? It's already so late. You're still awake?" Gu Nianji quickly replied, "Hua Xiao, where are you?" "I'm still in the Senate building." "What's wrong?" Hua Xiaoheng remained calm. Yin Shixiang and the staff of the Special Operations Forces were beside him. He looked very serious. "Is it convenient to talk?" Although Gu Nianji tried to remain calm, Hua Xiaoheng knew her so well that he quickly heard the urgency in her voice. "Yeah, go ahead." Hua Xiaoheng's hand paused. "I'm wearing my headset." Gu Nianji took a deep breath, then said in one breath, "Hua Xiaoheng, I found the problem with that piece of source code. Someone mixed a piece of intelligent logic programming language into your normal programming language. It can perform logical analysis on existing programs and even perform secondary programming." Her voice was crisp, and her words were as fast and urgent as frying beans. They were like pearls of different sizes falling onto a jade plate. Whether it was her voice or the content of her words, they were like music to Hua Xiaoheng's ears. He suddenly stopped typing on the keyboard and remained motionless for a full minute before asking hoarsely, "Nianji, repeat what you just said." "Speak slowly." Gu Nianji coughed and emphasized each word. "Your source code was implanted with an intelligent logic programming language. It can perform logical analysis on existing programs and even perform secondary programming." Hua Xiaoheng closed his eyes. Everything he didn't understand suddenly became clear. He was wondering why the surveillance software gave him such a strange feeling. If that was the case, then it completely explained the contradictions and inconsistencies. Hua Xiaoheng only thought about it for a second before immediately making a decision. "Nianji, I'll come back immediately to take you to the central control room." Although it was already early in the morning, Gu Nianji couldn't sleep at all. She couldn't wait for the opportunity to verify her findings. "Okay. Hua Xiao, come back quickly. I'll wait for you." Gu Nianji hung up and immediately went to the bathroom to take a shower. After showering and changing into clothes, she heard the sound of someone opening the door. She opened the bedroom door and saw Hua Xiaoheng striding in his military uniform. When he saw her, he extended his hand to her from afar. Come with me." Gu Nianji didn't hesitate to put her hand in his and walk with him to the central control room. It was the core of the entire empire. Countless secrets were kept there. Gu Nianji was so nervous that her palms were sweaty. Hua Xiaoheng's large hand was warm and dry. He held her firmly in his palm and brought her into his world. When they arrived at the central control room, Hua Xiaoheng didn't say much. He let Gu Nianji sit in front of the console. "Tell me, how did you discover it?" Gu Nianji composed herself and brought up her little program. Then she directly scanned the entire surveillance software. The computer in the central control room was the super system. Gu Nianji used to think that the computer in her bedroom was powerful enough, but in front of this supercomputer, her computer was instantly destroyed. It only took 5 minutes for the entire surveillance software to finish scanning. Gu Nianji had previously used her own computer to scan only half of the surveillance software, and it had taken her 12 hours. However, computers were infuriating when compared to computers. Gu Nianji looked at the error report generated after the scan was completed and said in surprise, "There are 2 more lines of instructions than I found." Hua Xiaoheng printed out the error check report and read it in his hand. He said calmly, "You only checked 1/3 of the source code of this surveillance software. Of course there are fewer errors." Now that he had checked the entire surveillance software, he only found 2 more lines of instructions. "Hua Xiao, you don't have to worry too much. Look, the intelligent programming program only has 4 lines. There's a limit to what it can do." Gu Nianji tried her best to comfort Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng sat down beside her and said in a low voice, "That's because our hardware standards are limited. Otherwise, these 4 lines of instructions can generate countless instructions. Look at this." Hua Xiaoheng drew a circle with a marker pen. Gu Nianji looked at it and suddenly felt ashamed. She didn't expect that these 4 lines of instructions were powerful enough. When it had the ability to program again, it meant countless possibilities. To be honest, she was really thankful that human hardware standards weren't high. Otherwise, The development of machine intelligence would only bring about more uncontrollable consequences. Wuxiao, what should we do? Did it affect you in any way? Gu Nianji asked nervously. If we delete these 4 lines of instructions, will it affect the operation of your surveillance software? Wuxiaoheng sat over. Let me try, counter-programming. I want to see where it hides the real surveillance data. This chapter. It was 3 o'clock today. Remind my friends for their monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the 3rd watch. P.S. The plot is going to be on a roller coaster again. Friends, fasten your seat belts. Chapter 1034. Wuxiaoheng sat in front of the central control room's supercomputer console and calmly typed in his highest level of authority. This kind of command allowed him to have the possibility of counter-programming. In the brightly lit control room, the embedded lights on the roof gradually dimmed. The display screen that occupied all 4 walls flashed with blue light. Countless instructions flashed past quickly, bringing with them rays of blue light. Although Wuxiaoheng was the only one doing the counter-programming, he couldn't work alone in the face of such a huge system. Because the central control room shouldered too many responsibilities, it couldn't stop operations because of an accident. As he counter-programmed, the other staff in the central control room also entered a state of alert. Area 1 alert complete, all normal. Area 2 alert complete, all normal. Area 3 alert complete, the target source has been identified. Area 4 alert complete, all normal. Area 27 alert complete, all normal. The entire Wuxia Empire was divided into a total of 27 districts. One after another, reports echoed in the central control room. Everyone's expression was solemn as they sat in front of their terminals and stared at their own territory. Gu Nianji was infected by the atmosphere and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She sat straight next to Wuxiaoheng exactly like a soldier. Wuxiaoheng was completely immersed in this powerful challenge. Ever since he joined the army, this was the 2nd time he encountered a challenge that made his heart beat faster. As for who would emerge victorious, it would be clear very soon. Fortunately, Gu Nianji had already caught the culprit in the surveillance software. After Wuxiaoheng thoroughly understood the 4 lines of command, he began counter-programming. Counter-programming was to restore a ready-made execution language to source code. It was like stripping off a fancily dressed man and revealing his true face. Gu Nianji didn't know if this was Wuxiaoheng's first time using an intelligent logic language like Prolog to counter-program, but judging by the speed at which his fingers typed, he must have dabbled in it. She breathed a sigh of relief as her eyes followed Wuxiaoheng's commands on the display screen. Watching Wuxiaoheng restore the 4 lines of command step by step with high intensity and remove the malicious command planted by the other party, Gu Nianji's relaxed heart tensed up again. Because those 4 lines of instructions were intelligent programming, the other party seemed to have taken precautions against this kind of counter-programming. Every time he unraveled a step and restored a line of source code, the AI program would immediately send out another command. It was like he was playing hide-and-seek, slippery, dodging his hand again and again. Wuxiaoheng didn't give up. Instead, he kept his composure and pursed his lips into a firm smile. His deep eyes sparkled, and they were even more alluring than the blue light on the screen. Gu Nianji's gaze involuntarily landed on Wuxiaoheng. She had seen many versions of Wuxiaoheng. He had the unparalleled heroism of repelling the enemy with a single spear strike on the battlefield. She had the valiant and heroic bearing of sparring with the crowd of heroes in the arena. There was also the tenderness of being strict and spoiling to her in life. But she had never seen Wuxiaoheng as intelligent as he was now. He was so good that Gu Nianji couldn't help wanting to become even better. In order to match him, in order to be able to stand together with him and not be a burden to him. True love makes us want to be a better version of ourselves. Regardless of whether it will come to fruition or not, we will be grateful that such a sincere relationship has appeared in our lives. At that moment, Gu Nianji knew that her heart would no longer waver and she would no longer retreat. She looked at Wuxiaoheng quietly, not letting go of any change in expression on his face. Not long after, she suddenly noticed that fine beads of sweat had appeared on Wuxiaoheng's forehead. Gu Nianji was slightly taken aback. Could it be that the counter-programming wasn't going smoothly? Gu Nianji's gaze moved to the screen. She saw that the screen that had been full of instructions earlier was now all garbled. What's going on? Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat and she asked softly, "Is there any trouble?" Wuxiaoheng grunted and lowered his voice to say, "Not only does the other party have the ability to reprogram, but this is also a phishing program." Gu Nianji's vision darkened and she almost fainted. Phishing? Did we fall for a trap? Gu Nianji blamed herself. Was she the one who caused trouble? Hua Xiaoheng seemed to know what she was thinking and immediately said, "It's not your fault. You did us a great service by finding the culprit in time. If it weren't for you, our losses would be incalculable." It was probably similar to the time when the German Federal Intelligence Agency encountered Gu Nianji. The difference was that Gu Nianji was a living, highly intelligent person at that time, while they were only facing 4 lines of intelligent commands now. It hadn't developed to the point of no return yet. However, these words didn't appease Gu Nianji. She became even more uneasy. What exactly happened? When I was counter-programming, the other party seemed to have predicted that we would counter-program after discovering it. Therefore, as soon as the counter-programming started, the intelligent commands they implanted sent a warning to its owner. At the same time, in a secret U.S. military laboratory on the other side of the ocean, an alarm suddenly rang loudly. It sounded like there was an enemy invasion and the entire base began to ring. Countless uniformed personnel put down their work at hand and ran to their own alert positions. In the secret laboratory in the center of the entire base, researchers wearing white lab coats over their military uniforms were nervously looking at the computer. Their hands and mouths cooperated as they continuously issued commands. "Son of bitch. We've been discovered. Mayday, mayday. Quick. Attack now." The other party is counter-programming. The hidden programs we implanted took the opportunity to open a back door. This is our only chance. Counter-programming will take up most of the functions of the other party's mainframe. This is the moment when the entire system's defenses are at their lowest. Fuck. For the rest of my life. I can finally enter the Wuxia Empire's most mysterious intranet. In the secret laboratory, each and every one of the smart and capable researchers in military uniforms was fully focused. As if on steroids, they threw themselves into a frenzied attack on the Wuxia Empire's network. The focus of their attack was located at the terminal of all the Wuxia Empire's network and electronic control systems, the central control room of the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces. Report. District 1 is in emergency. Report. District 2 is in emergency. Report. District 3 has fallen. Report. District 4. In the Wuxia Empire Central Control Room, the atmosphere went from solemn to tense and finally to panic. This was the first time they had encountered such a large-scale network attack. Because they had already been implanted with a guide party in the internal system, the other party's attack was fierce. They tore through the protective wall in one fell swoop and pounced on their core area. "Chief, we can't hold on much longer." The faces of the staff in the central control room were ashen. Although they hadn't given up on their final effort, seeing the areas they were guarding being attacked one by one, each of them felt as if their hearts were being cut by a knife. They wanted nothing more than to pick up their guns and directly rush into the network to fight these bastards. "What are you panicking for?" Hua Xiaoheng's voice was low. "Stabilize your position. Don't panic." Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng, who was already halfway through the counter-programming, then looked up at the wall formed by the large display screens around her. Blue dots appeared on them and they were slowly connecting into one. Gu Nianji knew that in here the blue dots represented the enemy, and the red dots represented herself. Now the blue side was about to divide and surround the red side and break through them one by one. No, she couldn't let them attack just like that. Gu Nianji had broken through the German Federal Intelligence Agency herself, so she knew the consequences and harm of doing so. Now it was her own country's turn. She couldn't accept it at all. If they broke through, it would mean that she was inferior to the enemy, and it would mean that she would return to the humiliating era of being slaughtered and enslaved. She watched as the blue dots continuously flashed on the display screens, and the red dots were gradually surrounded and devoured. Blood surged in her chest and she finally stood up and volunteered. "Hua Xiao, let me help you. Stop them." She clenched her fists, and there was a calmness and seriousness on her pretty little face that wasn't there in the past. Her imposing manner was awe-inspiring, and she had a valiant spirit that didn't fear death. She had the same temperament as the soldiers in the central control room. Hua Xiaoheng had no other choice at this time. If Zhao Liangzi was still here, Gu Nianji wouldn't have a chance to go up. But with so many surprises today, he had no other choice. "Okay, Gu Nianji, your code name?" Before Hua Xiaoheng could finish, Gu Nianji already said in a low voice, "Pink Piggy. Pink Piggy is my code name." The originally tense central control room fell silent for a moment because of Gu Nianji's words. Then there was a sudden burst of enthusiastic applause and cheers. "Pink Piggy? Nianji is the Pink Piggy? The great little piggy? Please accept my knee." Don't you want my knee? Can't I give it to you? A man kneels when he says so. Someone even whistled. It was the Pink Piggy. How many people in the computer industry hadn't heard of the famous Pink Piggy from last year? She single-handedly defeated the entire German Federal Intelligence Service and wrote a supreme legend in the hacker world. Even in the Wuxia Empire, only a handful of people knew that Gu Nianji was the Pink Piggy. She wasn't someone who liked to be in the limelight, and this code name not only meant supreme honor but also endless trouble. She would only say it if she had nothing better to do. But Gu Nianji said it now, not to show that she was very capable, but to give everyone confidence. To let the staff who had already been beaten senseless know that they still had strength. We haven't lost yet. The atmosphere in the entire central control room changed. Everyone looked at the approaching blue dots, no longer afraid or panicking. Instead they were more calm. Now that they looked at the blue dots again, it was like they had seen prey walking into a trap. Come on, Grandpa and Grandma are waiting for you here. Gu Nianji sat in front of the console next to Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng immediately gave her the highest authority. The two of them didn't say much and only exchanged a look of encouragement. Hua Xiaoheng shook her hand. Good luck. It was the second watch. It was the third watch today. A reminder for the monthly and recommendation votes. The second update of 100,000 Qidian coins for the leader of the alliance, I am Master Rashi July, has arrived. It was the third watch at 7 p.m. Chapter 1035. Gu Nianji gripped Hua Xiaoheng's hand tightly and said calmly, just focus on counter-programming. I'll block these attacks for you. I'll block for you as long as you need. Hua Xiaoheng looked deeply at Gu Nianji. Together? Together. Gu Nianji put on her Bluetooth headset and greeted the staff in the central control room to take over command. All parties listen to my orders. You guys continue to fight the blue side. I'll break into the external network and compete with them as a civilian hacker. Gu Nianji put on her Bluetooth headset that could change her voice and quickly entered the network system. As she keyed in a series of commands into the system, Gu Nianji gradually saw another world, another network world composed of data and logic. In this world, you couldn't tell if the other party was a human or a machine. It didn't matter who issued each command, whether it was a human or a machine. What was important was who these commands served and where they were taking us. Just as the blue side was frantically attacking the Wuxia Empire's network and taking down one node after another, a powerful force suddenly rose silently from the territory they occupied. Gu Nianji first entered the third zone that the blue side had taken down. She unexpectedly discovered that other than the resistance from the cabinet and the military, there was also a civilian hacker alliance. These people might just be ordinary programmers, students, managers, or employees in real life, but because of their interest in the internet, their familiarity with computers, and their love for the country, when they discovered that the country's network system was under external attack, they spontaneously organized themselves to fight against the external attack. Gu Nianji immediately realized their power. Although ants were small, they had the advantage in numbers and could also attack an elephant. Gu Nianji had an idea. Her hands flew across the keyboard as she typed out commands one after another to make the network work for her. First, she chose to fight the blue side's most arrogant Skull Society head-on. She wanted to gain the upper hand with a show of strength and issue a warning. The Skull Society's attack wasn't very clever, and their repeated mass mailing method was actually very primitive. Gu Nianji quickly repelled the Skull Society's attack and followed up with another attack. She followed the enemy's attack route and broke the Skull Society's backdoor program in one fell swoop. Then she released her target, a round and tender pink piglet with a small circle of tail. Pink Piglet. It's Pink Piglet. The Pink Piggy is here. It's as urgent as a command. The Pink Piggy has arrived. Evil spirits retreat. The laughter and cheers from the internet could practically be heard with one's ears. The Civil Hacker Alliance, who were relentless despite being beaten back by the blue team, immediately followed the signal Gu Nianji released and hacked into the Skull and Bones Society's intranet. The Skull and Bones Society was one of the code names used by the U.S. military's secret laboratory, just like Gu Nianji's Pink Piggy. The difference was that everyone knew that the Skull and Bones Society was one of the code names of the U.S. military, but there was no concrete evidence that the Pink Piggy was one of the code names of the Wuxia Empire's military. Half a year ago, it appeared in the night sky for a brief moment before disappearing without a trace. Although many people suspected that this person was a member of the Wuxia Imperial military, no one had concrete evidence. This time, the Pink Piggy had returned to the scene and was still fighting for the Wuxia Empire. However, she was fighting with the civilian hacker alliance and seemed to be distancing herself from the military personnel. They didn't cooperate with each other. In fact, Gunyenji's operation was more appropriate to cooperate with the civil hacker alliance. When she appeared on the internet, she used a civilian IP. Unless you were in the central control room, it was impossible to find out if her IP was really a civilian IP. At this time, the US had yet to break into the Wuxia Empire's central control room, so they could only be suspicious. When Gunyenji flashed her trademark, Pink Piggy logo, hackers all over the world went wild. They practically rushed to tell each other that the Pink Piggy had returned after disappearing for half a year. All eyes were on the smokeless war that was taking place on the Wuxia Empire's internet. Hackers in the third zone, don't be discouraged. I'll give you a set of codes. You can attack the other party's terminal once every 5 minutes and forcibly occupy all of their network bandwidth. Gunyenji used the voice-changing microphone to contact the hacker alliance in the third zone. Gradually, more and more people joined them. Whether they were hackers or not, as long as they knew how to use a computer and use DOS to send commands, they all joined. There was strength in numbers. At this time, the power of a group finally showed itself. When many spontaneous hackers helped attack the terminal network of the US secret laboratory, Gunyenji hid herself and tried to use Prologue to imitate the other party's 4 lines of commands to write a string of codes. She snuck in through the back door of the Skull and Bones Society and wandered around the other party's intranet. Her program wasn't considered mature, and the other party's understanding of intelligent programming was more mature than theirs. Soon she was discovered. Before Gunyenji was intercepted, she calmly released her Pink Piggy logo again and took a screenshot as a souvenir. She posted it on a forum where hackers gathered. Brothers and sisters, do you want to wander around the Skull and Bones Society in the United States? Gunyenji posted the other party's backdoor port and cracked password on the forum. This news caused a huge uproar on the World Hacker Forum. The backdoor port and cracked password of the Skull and Bones Society. How many people were willing to pay a lot of money to get it? To think that the Pink Piggy would hand it over so easily. This opportunity was too rare. Everyone knew that since the backdoor port and cracked password had been made public, the Skull and Bones Society would definitely change the password as soon as they found out. Therefore, they only had a very short time gap to take advantage of. Therefore, without another word, everyone launched an all-out attack on the backdoor of the US military Skull and Bones Society. The volume and quality of the attack this time was not something the Civil Hacker Alliance of the Wuxia Empire's 3 districts could compare to. The United States constantly attacked other countries' network systems and searched for loopholes in their networks. Similarly, other countries were also very interested in the United States' network systems and loopholes. This kind of competition had never stopped. When the staff of the U.S. military secret laboratory discovered that their network was suddenly congested, and it was very difficult to send out a simple command, they finally realized that there was a problem. The Pink Piggy appeared again? He's actually in the Wuxia Empire? I said last time that the Pink Piggy should be a Wuxia Empire insider, but you still didn't believe me? Don't you see who's benefiting the most? It's true that this Pink Piggy is a Wuxia Empire insider, but the problem is whether he's a government, military, or civilian. This is the key. What? If he's a civilian, do you still want to recruit him? Of course. The person in charge of the US military's secret laboratory had an arrogant expression. I'm not targeting anyone, but compared to the Pink Piggy, everyone here is trash. Everyone looked at their leader with a F***king dog expression. How could he say that to his subordinates? Fuck. I can't tolerate this. Let's fight it out with him. The agitated staff of the military laboratory once again threw themselves into a frenzied attack on the Wuxia Empire. But this time, Gunyenji had already bought Hua Xiaoheng valuable time. Hua Xiaoheng finally cut off the logical link between the 4 lines of commands and turned it from an intelligent program that could perform logical analysis and secondary programming to an ordinary source code. After stripping away the program, the intelligent system could see what the source code behind it was doing. Hua Xiaoheng nervously browsed through the source code. At the same time, according to the source code, he searched the system for what the 4 commands had done, hidden data, and misdirected directions. At that time, Gunyenji had already wandered around all 27 districts of the Wuxia Empire and returned. Gunyenji had an idea after understanding the situation of the blue dots attacking and even capturing the districts. Her slender fingers fluttered like the wings of a butterfly as she quickly typed out commands. Starting from the first zone, she set up obstacles for the invading blue dots. She killed them one by one, wiping away the traces they left behind without hesitation. Just like her devourer. Yixi, every invader could only be used to increase her appetite. What doesn't defeat me will only make me stronger. The secret laboratory on the other side of the ocean had just changed the backdoor port and reset password of the Skull and Bones Society to repel the first wave of attacks. But very quickly they discovered that after the first wave of attack, they were faced with a second wave that was even heavier. Report. Our data is seriously lost. Report. A devouring program has appeared in District 1 of the Wuxia Empire. Report. Requesting evacuation. Report. Requesting evacuation. If we don't retreat now, we won't be able to get the information we have. The head of the U.S. military's secret laboratory kicked the computer table. *CK. Pull back. Pull back. Just as the U.S. military was retreating, Gunyenji packaged a piece of information and disguised it with an AI program before placing it in the data collected by the Blue Side's retreating personnel. This small program was called the Trojan Horse program. It was just a small virus program that Gunyenji had randomly grabbed from the internet. It wasn't very useful. It would only destroy the information the U.S. military had obtained from the Wuxia Empire's network and erase all of the enemy's hard drive data. An hour later, the frenzied network attack finally stopped. In the central control room of the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces, the staff didn't dare to let their guard down. They still nervously watched their own territory and constantly scanned the network with software, worried that the enemy had left behind a time bomb. Gunyenji believed that the best defense was offense, so her strategy perfectly implemented this principle. When you raised a butcher's knife to others, you would also reveal your fatal heart. In the U.S. military's secret laboratory, a laboratory staff wearing a white lab coat over his military uniform wiped his sweat with a tissue and said with lingering fear, "Luckily we retreated early. We gained a lot this time. Come, let's enjoy the most mysterious Wuxia Empire intranet system." It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. A reminder for your monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 1036. In the secret laboratory that was decorated in a very modern way, the staff members who had just been busy for an hour all relaxed. They sat uncomfortably in their seats, and almost everyone had a can of Coke as they enjoyed the aftertaste of the battle. Although they hadn't broken through the final fortress of the Special Operations Forces, many nodes of the Wuxia Empire's intranet, including the websites of the Special Operations Forces, as well as the websites of the Cabinet and the Senate, had been breached. Now was indeed the time to appreciate their spoils of war. The person in charge of the U.S. military's secret laboratory pressed the Start button happily. Yellow files appeared on the large screen of the secret laboratory one by one. As the images flipped and unzipped, the files appeared in front of them one by one. Just as they were about to open the first file that had been unzipped, the file suddenly exploded like a bomb. It was as if fireworks had suddenly blossomed on their screens, and all the data suddenly became disorderly lines. The edges of the lines flashed with a dark gold light like mocking eyes, twinkling, spinning, rolling, and combining into all kinds of patterns. It really was exactly the same as their 4th of July fireworks party. Everyone was stunned by this turn of events. In an instant, everyone in the secret laboratory was stunned. No one spoke for a long time, and the entire room was silent as if it was the end of the world. In the end, the person in charge was the first to react. "WTF? What's going on?" he roared. "Who put this file in? Stop. Don't open any more files. Send all the data you received to the detection mailbox to filter the virus." A senior engineer suddenly realized something and stared fearfully at the executable program in a file. "There's a Trojan horse. A Trojan horse." In ancient Greek legend, the Greeks had never been able to conquer Troy. Later, a Greek commander thought of an idea. He had people build a huge Trojan horse. The belly of the Trojan horse was empty and could hide people. He hid the Greek warriors in the belly of the Trojan horse and placed them outside Troy. The others secretly hid. The long-besieged Troy couldn't see the Greeks anymore. They thought the Greeks had retreated, so they dragged the Trojan horses into the city as spoils of war. At night, when the Trojans were asleep, the Greeks hiding in the Trojan horse's belly took advantage of the night and slaughtered the Trojans, taking over Troy. From then on, the Trojan horse became synonymous with attracting foreign enemies and reaping what one had sown. Gunyenji had used the same principle to grab the modified Trojan virus at the last minute. When the Americans retreated from the network attack, they had downloaded as much system information and content from the Wuxia Empire's network as possible. Gu Nianji had taken this opportunity to disguise her Trojan horse as critical system information and insert it into their download package. What? Is there a Trojan virus? This person's greeting was still a step too late. When everyone came to their senses, the document had already been executed. It was not an intelligent program. It did not know secondary programming and it did not know how to hide and lurk. It would only faithfully execute the commands given to it by the programmer. Erase all content data. When the people from the secret laboratory retreated, they did not expect that they had brought a huge wooden horse with them. The computer used to play the system files was connected to the mainframe. At this moment, when countless fireworks were released on the huge screen, their system was collapsing, and their hard drives were wiped out. In less than a second, all the files downloaded from the Wuxia Empire's network had been completely deleted, and it had spread to all the computers connected to the mainframe. Turn off your phone. Forcefully shut down the phone. Oh, no. Suchexti. The person in charge of the U.S. secret laboratory grabbed what little hair he had left and roared like he had lost his parents. Turn off all the computers. If you can't turn them off, cut off the power. Cut off the power. I'd rather smash all the computers than let this thing continue to wreak havoc. Have you forgotten the German Federal Intelligence Service? The person in charge's roar finally woke up the dumbfounded staff. They quickly mobilized. Some turned off their phones, some turned off their power, some pulled out their network cables, and some even took hammers and smashed the mainframe. That was because it was too powerful. It was not complicated, nor was it intelligent. It only had one function, and that was to delete. When a simple and clear program was used on a powerful computer, it was as fast as a fish in water. It deleted data in a blink of an eye. It was a perfect example of the word virus. It was practically a lightning-fast infection and data invasion. There was no martial art in the world that could not be defeated by speed. Programs were the same. Therefore, the processing speed of a computer's CPU was the most important data indicator in determining the quality of a computer. But at this time, the faster the CPU, the faster the deletion speed. When they couldn't turn off their phones fast enough to keep up with the speed of the computer being infected, they could only do it the hard way. They smashed the mainframe and physically damaged it to prevent the program from invading the cloud system from the hard drive. That would be the death of them. The circuit system of the laboratory was also affected. The lights on and off, illuminating the postmodernist secret laboratory like it was the end of the world. Countless expensive equipment was destroyed, and the data that they had worked hard for years was also deleted without a trace. It would have been fine if there was a backup, but the problem was that their secret laboratory was the most confidential in the entire United States. This was the backup base for many of the U.S. military servers. They could only watch as the backup base's storage equipment was destroyed and the data was deleted. Just when they were exhausted from smashing the mainframe and thought that they had finally stopped the Trojan horse from running, a bright circle of light suddenly appeared on the large display on the wall. A cute pink piglet walked out of the circle of light, rolled twice towards them, then turned around with its back facing them. It revealed a short tail on its chubby little butt and wagged. Then the circle of light gradually shrank, and the pink and tender piglet disappeared into the circle of light. WTF. It's the pink piglet again. The person in charge of the secret laboratory let out an earth-shattering wail. He completely lost the mood and vigor he had when he wanted to recruit the pink piglet. He rushed out of the laboratory, grabbed the base's phone, and dialed the CIA without thinking. I want the head of the pink piglet. I want to catch him and bring him to the United States. Bring him to justice. I want to shoot him with my own hands. I want to cut off his skin and make it into a tonka. I want to hang one in each of your offices. He shouted hysterically, I don't care what method you use. I want you to catch the pink piglet. Extradite him back to the United States. No matter where he is. No matter where he is. No one has ever. He can take advantage of me without paying the price. The person in charge of the U.S. military's secret laboratory was also a rare genius. He led the U.S. military in many top-secret experiments that could not be made public and provided countless technical support to the U.S. military, the CIA, and the FBI. He was so arrogant that he didn't even bother to use a name. He called himself Mr. X. He didn't have a surname or a given name, only a code name. He loved the United States and swore from the day he joined the U.S. military that he would devote his life to the United States and the U.S. military. In this world, only the United States was the number one superpower on the blue planet, and he would only allow the United States to be the number one superpower. Only he could abuse others and others could not abuse him. If someone abused him, then that person must not exist in this world. He would not allow such a person to exist. On the other end of the phone was the director of the CIA, one of the most powerful people in the United States. When he found out that the military's secret laboratory had suffered a devastating attack, he was both shocked and angry. He slammed the table in anger and stood up. The Wuxia Empire has gone too far. How dare they launch a cyber attack on our country? How shameless. Shame on them. When he said this, he completely disregarded the fact that this cyber war was initiated by his own military's secret laboratory. Because to him, the U.S. military's secret laboratory invading other countries' networks was the U.S. military's daily routine. It was beyond reproach, and other countries needed to respect the U.S. military's daily routine. But to be killed by others was treason and heresy. It violated international law. It violated international morality and standards. It was necessary to launch a war of public opinion around the world and denounce the shameless, hegemonic Wuxia Empire. The director of the CIA put down the phone and immediately called his right-hand man over. Contact our people immediately and have them do it. Also, call the White House immediately and tell the president that I want to see him immediately and ask him to refrain from tweeting for 24 hours. This was the first watch. It was the third watch today. A reminder for your monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, monthly votes for 2,400 plus watch. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the third watch. Chapter 1037. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time. The President of the United States was in a heated debate with the media on Twitter. Dear American citizens, our media is a wholesale center for fake news. Please don't believe those fake news, believe my Twitter. P.S. I'm not an American if I don't retweet. I'm proud to be an American. Believe me, I want to make America great again. Just as he was about to send a few more tweets, he heard the landline phone on his desk ring. This was the president's special line. Usually when a call came in, it was an important matter. The President of the United States reluctantly put away his cell phone, picked up the landline phone and said, "Hello," lazily. "Mr. President, this is Hillent. Are you free? I need half an hour to inform you of a cyber attack that our country has just suffered." The caller was Major General Hillent, the director of the CIA. The President of the United States suddenly trembled with anger. What? Say that again. Someone dares to attack my great American network? They're not giving me a way out. Without the internet there would be no Twitter. How could he continue to be the president? Major General Hillent had long been accustomed to the image of the president as a terminal internet addict, and did not care much. He still said in a business-like tone, "Mr. President is wise. We will take a series of follow-up measures to crack down on those who dare to violate our American network security." Good. I support you. The President of the United States breathed a sigh of relief. Major General Hillent, I knew you would make a great contribution to making America great again. At this time, Major General Hillent, the director of the CIA, was also unsure if he should say it or not. He took a deep breath and went to the President's Oval Office. "Mr. President, this is a report on a cyber attack that has just occurred. Please take a look." Major General Hillent, the director of the CIA, placed a 500-word report in front of the President. The President of the United States frowned and looked at it, then pointed to the report and said, "I saw the cyber attack here, but what about the damage? Have you evaluated it?" Major General Hillent nodded and took out another 1,000-word report. "Here is the Fixed Asset Loss Assessment Report and Intangible Asset Assessment Report." The two reports were full of numbers. Most people would find it difficult to look at them, but the President of the United States was a successful businessman. He had the best feeling for numbers. Therefore, when he saw the two reports, he became even angrier. He pounded the table and roared, "This is too much. Didn't you say it was a cyber attack? How did we lose so many computers? Do you think I'm stupid? Could he climb over the network cable and smash the computer?" Major General Hillent, the veins on his forehead throbbed. He pushed up the sunglasses on the bridge of his nose and said expressionlessly, "Because that place is also our country's largest backup storage base. All of the world's data since the birth of the internet has been backed up there. Of course, apart from the encrypted intranets of various countries. Those encrypted intranets were places that their automatic downloading programs had difficulty accessing, which was one of the reasons they began experimenting with intelligent programming languages. If the intelligent programming language was developed to perfection, they could hand over the task of entering the encrypted intranet to the intelligent program. This time they had hacked into the Wuxia Empire's intranet using an AI program. Unfortunately, before their AI program was fully developed, it had already been discovered and removed. So what? The President of the United States glared at the director of the CIA. Why do we have backups of all the world's internet data here? Did you ask them to collect usage fees? Do you think it's free to use our backup data? Major General Hillent, forget it. He had already given up on treatment. Major General Hillent didn't explain more about security to the President. Instead, he said directly, Mr. President, this is a very good suggestion. We will consider it. But our problem now is that we were hacked by the Wuxia Empire and suffered heavy losses. You still haven't explained why you lost so much hardware due to the network intrusion. The President of the United States was a very shrewd businessman and not easy to fool. Major General Hillent explained again, because it was a backup base, the facilities were very tight. From electricity to fire protection, they were all designed for hundreds of years of uninterrupted storage. Therefore, when the Wuxia Empire cyber attack suddenly came, our people had no choice but to use physical destruction to destroy the computers infected by the Trojan virus. Because of the special nature of the backup base, they couldn't shut down all the equipment and could only physically destroy the infected equipment. Of course, the biggest reason was that the person in charge of the secret laboratory didn't expect that the pink piggy, who had disappeared for half a year, would suddenly appear and join the Wuxia Empire's hacker organization to launch an attack on their American network. The most cunning thing was that the pink piggy actually disguised the Trojan virus as a system file and was packaged and brought back by them. Just thinking about it made him want to vomit blood. The person in charge, Mr. X, kept complaining that the pink piggy was too cunning and wanted to find him and fight him fair and square. Major General Hillent, however, believed that if the pink piggy couldn't be used by them, they could only make him physically disappear, which meant that he would die. The President of the United States finally understood Major General Hillent's meaning. After a moment of silence, he said, "What do you need me to do?" He finally got it. Major General Hillent almost burst into tears. He hurriedly said, "Mr. President, if our efforts don't work, then we hope that you can directly pressure the Wuxia imperial government to hand over the pink piggy." The President of the United States raised his hand and agreed without hesitation. "That's no problem. As the President of the United States, this is the effort I should make for America's cybersecurity. If you can't find out who the pink piggy is, I will pressure the Wuxia imperial government to hand over this person." Major General Hillent was surprised again and blushed a little. He didn't expect that the President, who he thought was extremely unreliable, would actually understand what he meant in an instant. He was thinking that if he couldn't find out the true identity of the pink piggy, then he would directly use force and have the U.S. Department of Foreign Affairs pressure the Wuxia Empire to hand over the person. But doing so meant that the CIA was incompetent. They couldn't even find a hacker, and they had to have the government step in and use diplomatic pressure to force the other party to hand over the person. It was really a bit embarrassing. Most people wouldn't be able to understand the hidden meaning here. But their Mr. President immediately understood. It should be said that this seemingly unreliable President of the United States was also a dark horse in the election. Other than the voters who voted for him, perhaps even he himself didn't believe that he had really been elected president. However, since he had become president, he would still work hard to complete his work as president and work hard for the great revival of the United States. After Major General Hillent finished discussing the action steps with the president, he was very grateful for the president's support for his work. For the first time, he gave the president a sincere and unperfunctory military salute. The President of the United States noticed the change in the CIA director's attitude and was also overjoyed. He couldn't control his mouth for a moment and said, "Don't worry, if they don't hand over the person, I will attack them on Twitter. I will embarrass them in front of the whole world." Major General Hillent really wanted to take back his good impression of him just now. He closed his eyes and told the President, "Mr. President, this matter must be kept absolutely confidential before diplomatic pressure is applied. So I hope you won't send any Twitter for 24 hours. Because the only way to prevent the president from leaking information was to make sure he didn't send Twitter at all. If he could, Major General Hillent really wanted to confiscate the president's phone. Of course, it was just a thought. How could he confiscate the president's phone? "I know what I'm doing." The President of the United States waved his hand. "Don't worry." It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the United States, which was also 2 o'clock in the morning in the Wuxia Empire. In the central control room of the Wuxia Empire's imperial capital, everyone had experienced a tense cyber war and had finally relaxed. Other than some people who were still scanning the network to remove traces left behind by the US cyber attack, most people were resting. Gu Nianji sat next to Hua Xiaoheng and chatted with him from time to time as she analyzed the source code that had been restored by the 4 lines of AI program. It seems that these 4 lines of instructions were implanted into this monitoring software 6 months ago. Gu Nianji pointed to the Special Task Force's special monitoring software on the screen. Yes, it should have been implanted for the Prime Minister's election. Hua Xiaoheng looked higher and further. He would never forget that time when someone seemed to have cast an invisible net. They first transferred him out of the country, then lured Gu Nianji out, and finally commandeered the Central Control Room to monitor the election. So coincidentally, the election at that time was supervised by the Secret Service and the Special Operations Force's Central Control Room together. This was the second update, and the monthly votes for 2,400 plus updates had been delivered. It was the third update today. Remind my friends for their monthly votes and recommendation votes. 7 o'clock in the evening, the third update. P.S. According to the US TV news, there really is such a base in the United States that continuously stores global internet data since the birth of the internet. Maybe our chat records and emails from a long time ago can be backed up there. Chapter 1038. Gu Nianji looked at Hua Xiaoheng's search program. Still looking for the original data? Hua Xiaoheng smiled. I can't hide anything from you. I didn't? Gu Nianji rubbed her nose in embarrassment. I was just guessing. The data for the past 6 months is mainly about the general election, right? He wouldn't tell Gu Nianji that investigating Hong Kongquan's whereabouts was one of the most important reasons. As for the surveillance of the general election voting, it was just like pulling out the radish and bringing out the mud, following the vine to the melon. Gu Nianji had also experienced intense mental work. She suddenly stopped and felt weak all over. She wanted nothing more than to find a place to lie down. But seeing that the people in the central control room were sitting up straight, she didn't want to slouch. He could only endure it with great difficulty. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at her sleepy face from the corner of his eye and said gently, "Go back to sleep. It's almost 3 o'clock. I'm not sleepy." Gu Nianji shook her head but couldn't help yawning. Hua Xiaoheng smirked. Still not sleepy? I want to see how you use this program. Gu Nianji was very interested in intelligent programming. It seemed like Hua Xiaoheng was already very familiar with it. Learning from him would definitely be better than learning from He Zhiqiu. He Zhiqiu was limited by his status, so it probably wouldn't be easy for him to teach her. Hua Xiaoheng understood Gu Nianji's strong thirst for knowledge, so he didn't continue to urge her to go to sleep. Instead, he quickly searched through the data from the past 6 months. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the president, who had just finished an economic conference, picked up his phone. Recalling the network intrusion that his country had just suffered, he was immediately filled with righteous indignation. He also wanted to communicate with his citizens, telling them that with him around they would be safe. 5 minutes later, a tweet appeared online. United States President. The spirit of the internet is free in sharing, peace and communication. However, some countries went too far and actually colluded with the infamous hacker Pink Piggy to invade our country's network. I will not say who this country is, I will wait and see. Please continue to follow my Twitter. At the same time, the director of the Huaxia Empire's Secret Service, Hong Kongquan, was woken up from his sleep by an urgent phone ringing. In a daze, he took the phone and looked at it. Suddenly he woke up. This was a call from the invalid number. He had not contacted this number for several months. Hong Kongquan rushed to the bathroom with his phone and shut the door tightly. He pressed the phone to his ear and asked softly, "Is that you? What can I do for you?" The person on the other side paused for a moment. His voice was obviously through a voice changer. There was a metallic clanging sound, but it wasn't unpleasant. Although this person's voice had changed, his tone was still the same. His tone was simple and clear. It was obvious that he had a strong will and was someone who could persuade others. "Hong Kongquan, I'm very unhappy with you and I didn't want to contact you for a while. However, there's been a good opportunity recently. I'm not sure if you're willing to give it a try." The man spoke very slowly, but each word carried a heavy feeling. "Of course I'm willing." Hong Kongquan hurriedly expressed his loyalty and indicated that he still had questions to ask this person. This man was like a selfless lay phone. He didn't seek fame or profit. Hong Kongquan had once doubted this man's intentions, but after all these years of interaction, he was able to completely trust this man. Although they had never met before, the two of them had already established a relationship of trust. "Alright, I'll give you one last chance. If you still don't grasp this opportunity, then you deserve to never be able to surpass your disciple in this lifetime. The man's sudden threat surprised Hong Kongquan. He quickly regained his composure. Tell me. As long as I can do it, even if there are no conditions, I'll create the conditions to do it. All right. The man was very satisfied and said, I've received news that there seems to be a problem with your central control room. However, your chief is hiding the truth from the public and has kept the whole thing under wraps. There was even a cyber war with the United States just now. I think there's something wrong with his motives. Hong Kongquan was speechless. He didn't know about his safety. There's really a cyber war? How come I didn't know about it? Hong Kongquan scratched his head in confusion. What do you need my help with? Of course it's true. The two of them lowered their voices. After discussing it, Hong Kongquan finally hung up. He looked at his watch. It was already 3:30 in the morning. If what this man said was true, then he could really do something to change the situation. Hong Kongquan washed up in the bathroom, took a shower, and changed into a black shirt and pants before coming out of the bathroom. He picked up his phone and called his trusted subordinates one by one. Return to the small conference room of the Secret Service immediately. There's an important meeting to be held. At 4 o'clock in the Wuxia Empire, the small conference room of the Secret Service was brightly lit. An intense meeting was taking place there. Director Hong, this is the authorization from Speaker Long and Prime Minister Tan that we obtained overnight. Because it's related to the military, General Ji's authorization is not important. Hong Kongquan's secretary placed the authorization in front of him. Hong Kongquan looked at the authorization and squinted. He stood up. Bring the authorization to the Special Operations Forces. He was wearing the uniform of the Secret Service and gave orders expressionlessly. Each team will bring their guns. Go and collect bullets before you depart. 5 people to a team and move as a group when the time comes. Special passes are required to enter the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces. Go and prepare them quickly. The more the better. The Secret Service and the Special Operations Forces were considered to supervise each other within the Wuxia Empire. They restrained each other and balanced each other. Therefore, the moles in the Secret Service had to be caught by the Special Operations Forces. The personnel in the Special Operations Forces who violated the rules were handled by the Secret Service. As soon as they set off, Hu Xiaoheng received an urgent call. The call came from Hu Xiaoheng's informant in the Secret Service. He also had such people in the Special Operations Forces, but they were not good at hiding. Hu Xiaoheng never gave these informants from other departments important jobs. However, the people in the Special Operations Forces were professionals after all. They hid like fish in water in other departments and would not reveal their identities unless it was a critical moment. What's the matter? Hu Xiaoheng looked at his watch. It was almost 4 o'clock in the morning. I'll make this short. Target A has brought people to the Special Operations Forces and may be unfavorable to you. They are currently investigating the true identity of the pink piggy. The person hung up after he finished speaking. He couldn't get through if he tried again. Hu Xiaoheng pursed his lips and looked at Gu Nianji, who was sitting next to him with her hands on her hips. His mind quickly considered the pros and cons currently. Only he, General Ji Zhao Liangze, and the 27 people in the room knew that Gu Nianji was the pink piggy. These people were all his confidants, so he believed that they would not leak the secret. However, it would be bad if she ran into those people from the Secret Service. Although Hu Xiaoheng had already increased Gu Nianji's security level and hired her as a consultant for the Special Operations Forces, it was completely fine for her to come to the Central Control Room to help them. However, if at this critical moment, when the pink piggy once again shone brilliantly, people saw that Gu Nianji was also in the Central Control Room, then the secret of the pink piggy would be difficult to keep. This was because everyone guessed that the pink piggy was a woman, and a very young woman at that. However, in the Central Control Room today, Gu Nianji was the only woman. She had used a voice changer and a civilian IP when talking to the hackers outside. However, this method could only deceive ordinary people and would not work on the old foxes of the Secret Service. Therefore, to be on the safe side and to avoid endless trouble in the future, Hu Xiaoheng decided to conceal the identity of the pink piggy. Therefore, he absolutely could not let those people see that Gu Nianji was also in the Central Control Room at this time. Hu Xiaoheng solemnly held Gu Nianji's arm and stood up. Quickly leave this place and return to my official residence. What is it? Gu Nianji looked at Hu Xiaoheng in surprise and was about to continue asking when she realized that her phone was vibrating. She took it out to see that it was He Zhichu's call. Calling her at 4 in the morning? What was going on? She swiped the phone to answer the call, and the first thing He Zhichu said was, Nianji, the CIA is looking for the pink piggy. This was the third watch. It was the third watch today. Remind everyone of your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 1039. Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat. She thought to herself that it wasn't strange that the CIA wanted to find the pink piggy. Based on what she had done from Germany to the United States, there would probably be a group of people who hated the pink piggy to the core. However, she was curious as to how He Jichu knew about the CIA's information. Gu Nianji looked at Huo Xiaoheng, who was staring at her intently, and whispered into the phone. How did you know? He Jichu stood up from his computer desk irritably and walked towards the door as he said in a low voice, You didn't think I'd been sleeping the whole time after all the commotion tonight, did you? He had just reminded Gu Nianji about Prologue during the day, and now Gu Nianji had called him in the middle of the night to tell him that she had found a bug. How could he sleep? After tossing and turning in bed for a while, he finally got up and went online to see if there were any follow-up developments. In other words, He Jichu had actually been paying attention to tonight's cyber battle. Gu Nianji, it was late at night and there were many night owls who hadn't slept yet. But even if you knew about this, how did you know about it? Gu Nianji didn't say the words CIA in front of everyone because she didn't want to cause trouble for He Jichu. This incident has caused quite a stir. Ordinary people may not know about it, but those special departments that should know about it all know about it. He Jichu coughed. As for how I found out about the CIA, you should know that I have a good relationship with the US military. Okay, where are you now? This is a very serious matter. Don't take it lightly. Gu Nianji pouted. I'm not afraid of them. Come and catch me if you can. He Jichu took a deep breath. Nianji, don't throw a tantrum. I'm telling you, there's no one in the CIA who will let you go. Messing with the Americans is not an ordinary problem. What did I do wrong? They were the ones who started it. Gu Nianji was also furious. I was defending myself. Self-defense, understand? Nianji, the Americans won't care if you're defending yourself or not. If you endanger their national security interests, they will always try peaceful means before resorting to force. Gu Nianji sneered and shook her head. Americans? Peaceful measures before resorting to violence? Do they understand it too? Of course. He Jichu paced around the room irritably. Isn't it the same in America? First, the CIA and CIB worked in the dark, and when they couldn't achieve their goals, they got the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to come out and put pressure on them. If the Ministry of Foreign Affairs still can't achieve their goal, it's time for the Ministry of National Defense to step in. This is their way of using peaceful means before resorting to force. She looked at Huo Xiaoheng again and said, I'll let Huo Xiao talk to you. As she spoke, she handed the phone to Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Xiaoheng took Gu Nianji's phone. Before he could say anything, he heard He Jichu's cold voice. Huo Xiaoheng, how many times have you put Nianji in danger? If Huo Xiaoheng hadn't needed Gu Nianji's help with something, how would the pink piggy have offended the CIA? Huo Xiaoheng couldn't argue with He Jichu about who was more dangerous to Gu Nianji. He tried his best to remain calm and said calmly, I need your help right now. Hurry over and take Nianji away. As he spoke, he looked at his watch and estimated the speed of Hong Kongquan's men from the Secret Service. Can you get there in 15 minutes? Huo Xiaoheng gave He Jichu an address near the headquarters of the Special Operations Forces and asked him to pick up Gu Nianji there. He Jichu froze. What's going on? We don't have that much time. If you say one more word, we only have 14 minutes. According to Huo Xiaoheng's calculations, Hong Kongquan and his men from the Secret Service would need 20 minutes to get there. Therefore, He Jichu could only pick up Gu Nianji before those people arrived. He Jichu understood and didn't ask any more questions. He immediately took the car keys. I'll get there in 14 minutes. Huo Xiaoheng knew that He Jichu's car wasn't an ordinary car. This speed was possible, but unfortunately he didn't have a chance to verify it. I'll have Nianji wait for you there. As Huo Xiaoheng spoke, he walked to the door and called Fan Jian over. Take Miss Gu out and see her get into the car with your own eyes before reporting back. Huo Xiaoheng paused. If you can't see her get into the car with your own eyes, then bring her back. Do you hear me? Roger, Chief. Fan Jian saluted and took Gu Nianji's arm to walk out. Gu Nianji kept turning around to look at Huo Xiaoheng, but only saw the tall figure in the hallway getting further and further away from her. Miss Gu, the elevator has arrived. We'll take the elevator up. Fan Jian's expression was also very serious. The central control room was on the 6th floor underground. To get out, they had to take the elevator up. When Gu Nianji followed Fan Jian up the elevator, Huo Xiaoheng had already closed the door to the central control room. He said sternly to the other 27 staff members in the room, "This is an emergency. Miss Gu didn't come here tonight and you don't know who the pink piggy is." Everyone nodded in silence. Although they didn't know what had happened, it didn't seem like a good thing. The fact that Gu Nianji was the pink piggy had indeed given everyone endless hope in that moment of despair. It allowed everyone to regain their confidence and not be defeated by the United States. That was how they managed to hold their last line of defense. But now that they had calmed down, they all knew that if the fact that Gu Nianji was the pink piggy was leaked, it would be a disaster for this girl. They had all watched Gu Nianji grow up. This orphan girl had been in the Special Operations Forces for 6 years. From a 12-year-old girl who had encountered a major car accident and was scared to the point of breaking down, she had grown into the amazing talent she was now. They had all seen it with their own eyes, and they felt even more concern and pity for her, as if they were family. After fighting side by side tonight, Gu Nianji was not only family to them, but also a comrade that they needed to protect with all their might. "Don't worry, Huoxiao. We know what's important." The 27 people all expressed their determination. No one had the idea of betraying their friends for glory. Everyone despised people who stabbed their comrades in the back. Wu Xiaoheng had founded the Special Operations Forces, so he naturally had his own team. He couldn't have achieved his current achievements by fighting alone. He also had many comrades by his side who were willing to sacrifice their lives for him, and he could also sacrifice his life for them. Wu Xiaoheng nodded and his expression relaxed slightly. "Okay, I believe you. Don't disappoint me and don't disappoint Nianji, who has done so much for our country. Today's incident will be kept a secret for now. After this incident is over, I will personally report to General Ji and the Senate to give everyone the military merits and rewards they deserve, including Gu Nianji." The 27 people in the room nodded in unison. "We will never disappoint our comrades." Wu Xiaoheng returned to his seat and waved his hand. "Do what you need to do. Wrap up the work at hand immediately and write the report." According to He Jichu, many forces had already noticed what happened tonight, so they had to be on guard. Wu Xiaoheng quietly entered the central control room's surveillance system and secretly cut off the entire building's surveillance for an hour. All the images of Gu Nianji were packaged and stored in a secret file. They would only be decrypted after this incident was over. Fan Jian drove Gu Nianji out of the Special Operations Forces headquarters and directly to the address Wu Xiaoheng had given her. It was a night market in a bustling commercial district. Although it was early in the morning, the place was still crowded and lively. Ijichu drove his silver Maserati to the appointed place and immediately saw Gu Nianji standing on the side of the road, looking around. He drove slowly to a stop in front of her and lowered the window. "Nianji, get in the car." Gu Nianji didn't say anything else. She opened the door and got in the car, then sped away with Hijichu. Fan Jian sat in the car and watched Gu Nianji get in Hijichu's car and drive away before turning back to the base. He arrived only 3 minutes earlier than Hong Kongquan and the others who arrived later. When the Secret Service vehicle that Hong Kongquan had brought with him was waiting at the entrance of the Special Operations Forces to check their passes, Fan Jian's car had just driven into Wu Xiaoheng's official residence. Hong Kongquan sat in the car and looked at the dark night sky expressionlessly. This was the darkest moment before dawn. Soon he would be able to make this place shine brightly. He had held on to the evidence for so long, and it was finally time to take it out. "Wu Xiaoheng, I'll see how you argue this time." Hong Kongquan flexed his fingers and his knuckles almost cracked. He had spread the word that he wanted to investigate the pink piggy, but he was actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. In front of the main entrance of the Special Operations Forces headquarters, the guard was checking their passes. After confirming that there were no mistakes, they were allowed to enter. However, the guard couldn't call the people inside because Hong Kongquan had already instructed his own people to watch over the guard. "Don't let him call the people inside." The guard looked at the authorization letter that Hong Kongquan produced with the joint signatures of the Prime Minister and the Speaker. He quickly stood straight and didn't appear to move. However, when he suddenly stood at attention, he had already kicked the internal alarm next to the leg of the table. This internal alarm wasn't as loud as other alarms. It would only notify the core forces in the base, such as Wu Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang, Zhao Liangzi, and Zhou Qiyuan. Hong Kongquan and his trusted subordinates from the Secret Service rushed in aggressively. "Who is it? Stop. Password." In the darkness, a few soldiers from the Special Operations Forces who were standing guard walked out with their guns and aimed at Hong Kongquan and his people. Hong Kongquan slowly raised his hand and showed the authorization letter signed by Speaker Long and Prime Minister Tan. He said in a low voice, The Secret Service is under orders from the Senate and the Cabinet to conduct a random inspection of the Special Operations Forces. Do not obstruct official business. The soldiers froze for a moment and looked at each other. Wait here. We will report this to the higher-ups. The guns they were carrying were the latest domestic semi-automatic submachine guns, which were much more powerful than the revolvers Hong Kong and his people were carrying. The people from the Secret Service all had ugly expressions on their faces. Captain, there are people from the Secret Service coming with authorization letters signed by the Speaker and the Prime Minister. Should we let them in? They don't know the password. Got it. Let them in. At this time, Hu Xiaoheng's orders had already been passed down to all the units in the Special Operations Forces headquarters. Zhou Qiyuan was also gathering the military police and was preparing to rush over. This was the first night watch. It should be the second night watch today. A reminder for your monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 7 p.m. the second night watch. P.S. Thank you Beth1211 for tipping 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Chapter 1040. Hong Kong led his Secret Service subordinates and slowly broke through the layers of sentries at the Special Operations Forces headquarters. They finally arrived at the entrance of the central control room. The sentries of the Special Operations Forces were shocked by the authorization he used. After all, the actions of the Special Operations Forces within the country were extremely restricted, and they were not allowed to cross ranks. This was all to check and balance the unlimited power of the Special Operations Forces overseas. Otherwise, no one would be able to control such a department, and in the end, good things would turn into bad things. Hu Xiaoheng had always demanded that his soldiers absolutely obey orders from their superiors within the country. As long as it was authorization from the Senate and the military, they had to obey unconditionally. He could disobey orders from the cabinet, so although Prime Minister Tan's signature was invalid in their eyes, the authorization had Speaker Long's signature on it. That alone was enough to make everyone in the Special Operations Forces unable to disobey. The central control room of the Special Operations Forces headquarters was on the 6th floor of the office building. Standing in front of the black door that could withstand 6 nuclear attacks, Hong Kong was extremely emotional. He had finally arrived at this place. Last time, when Hu Xiaoheng was transferred to the United States to carry out the mission to rescue Tang Guirin, he had been instructed by someone to remotely control and implant 4 lines of special monitoring commands. That person had clearly assured him that this AI program was very advanced, 50 years more advanced than their current machine language, and that it would never be discovered. He hadn't expected to be discovered by Hu Xiaoheng in less than half a year. When Hong Kong heard that person tell him this news half an hour ago, his entire body had gone cold, and he was momentarily speechless. If Hu Xiaoheng discovered that he had implanted these 4 lines of AI program language, the consequences would be unimaginable. Hong Kong was not convinced, not at all. But since it had already happened, Hong Kong wouldn't just sit around and wait for death. Did Hu Xiaoheng really not have any weaknesses that could be exploited? Ah, how naive. Hong Kong held the authorization in his hand and couldn't help but feel refreshed when he thought of Speaker Long's eyes when he saw the evidence in his hand. In front of him was the central control room of the Special Operations Forces headquarters. From today onwards, this place would belong to him, Hong Kong. The tightly shut door was wrapped in a thick layer of cowhide. Inside, there was excellent soundproofing material and radiation protection. Just this door alone was enough to make the Secret Service look inferior. Hong Kong's eyes flashed as he spoke into the intercom at the door. Major General Hu Xiaoheng, I have been ordered to conduct a random inspection of your department. Please come out for inspection. Hu Xiaoheng was very cautious. Although he didn't know why Hong Kong had come so aggressively, he knew very well that Hong Kong was a man who wouldn't give up until he saw his prey. He wouldn't do anything unless he saw his own coffin. He would never do anything that he wasn't confident in. Since he dared to use such a large force, he naturally came prepared. Hu Xiaoheng wasn't worried at all, but when he heard from the guards that Hong Kong had Speaker Long's signature as authorization, his heart sank. He felt that something was wrong. Speaker Long clearly knew that Hu Xiaoheng suspected Hong Kong, so he specifically signed Hu Xiaoheng's request for Hong Kong's full surveillance. But in the blink of an eye, Speaker Long had agreed to let Hong Kong investigate Hu Xiaoheng. If there wasn't a problem with Speaker Long, then Hong Kong had evidence against Hu Xiaoheng. This was because Hu Xiaoheng had only just found some evidence to support his suspicions against Hong Kong. In terms of time, he was indeed one step behind. So Speaker Long was starting to suspect him again? To be on the safe side, Hua Xiaoheng made a prompt decision to re-encrypt the entire building system. All the main control systems in the central control room also activated a special encryption program, and all the backup data was locked. It was better to be safe than sorry. Hua Xiaoheng looked at the 27 staff members in the room and nodded to them. He then got up and walked to the door, placing his palm on the sensor on the wall. The door scanned his palm, and after confirming that there were no mistakes, it activated the automatic opening program. The heavy door slowly opened to both sides, but it didn't fully open. It only revealed a passageway that was just wide enough for one person to pass through. Hua Xiaoheng folded his hands behind his back and stood at the entrance of the passageway, blocking the door completely. Director Hong, what brings you to the Special Operations Forces so early in the morning? Hong Kongquan was a head shorter than Hua Xiaoheng, but his aura didn't lose out to him at all. He raised his head to look at Hua Xiaoheng and took out the authorization document signed by both Speaker Long and Prime Minister Tan. He waved it in front of Hua Xiaoheng. Major General Hua Xiaoheng, tonight, oh no, I should say early this morning, the Secret Service would like to invite you and your team to talk about what happened on our nation's network. By the way, which one of you is the Pink Piggy? Step forward and let me see. Hong Kongquan didn't know who the Pink Piggy was either. He was only saying this to trick Hua Xiaoheng. If he let his guard down a little, he would be able to trick him. However, he was facing the experienced Major General Hua Xiaoheng, the commander of the Special Operations Forces, so this method was completely ineffective. Hua Xiaoheng pretended to be confused. Talk? What do you want to talk about? There are laws in the country, and the Special Operations Forces is only responsible to the Senate and the military. The Secret Service is under the Senate, so we have no obligation to report to you. What Pink Piggy? Director Hong, are you talking about that very powerful hacker? I also want to know her. If Director Hong knows who she is, can you introduce her to us? I want to recruit her very much. You don't know who the Pink Piggy is? Hong Kongquan's eyes flashed with surprise. He looked at Hua Xiaoheng carefully and realized that he didn't seem to be lying at all. Could it be that he really doesn't know who the Pink Piggy is? Hong Kongquan muttered to himself. We would really like to know who the Pink Piggy is. If Director Hong knows, please let us know. Hua Xiaoheng acted as if he was thirsty for talent. Our country needs talented computer people like that. Hong Kongquan was speechless. You really don't know who the Pink Piggy is? Forget it, we'll talk about this later. However, you don't have the obligation to report to me. Hong Kongquan changed the topic and said calmly, but don't forget, the Secret Service has the responsibility to supervise the Special Operations Forces. You can supervise. Didn't you watch everything that happened on the internet in the wee hours of the morning? If you didn't watch, then you failed in your duties. Hua Xiaoheng didn't back down at all. Just like Gu Nianji, he didn't even want to be at a disadvantage verbally in front of Hong Kongquan. He didn't need to. Hong Kongquan chuckled. Why would we watch? We all personally went into action and racked our brains for the country's cybersecurity. We did our best to turn the tide. But you. Hong Kongquan's voice suddenly became stern. He pointed at Hua Xiaoheng's chest and shouted angrily, Major General Hua, do you know why such a large-scale invasion occurred on the internet in the wee hours of the morning? It's because the Special Operations Forces didn't care about the consequences. Greedy and reckless, initiating provocation, even inviting the wolf into the house. This goes against the basic principles of our country and gives foreign hostile forces an opportunity to seriously jeopardize our country's cybersecurity. I've already reported this to Speaker Long and Prime Minister Tan. The Special Operations Forces must have someone take responsibility. As soon as Hong Kongquan finished speaking, the 27 staff members in the central control room were all furious. They surrounded Hua Xiaoheng and shouted in the direction of the door, it was obviously the Americans who ambushed us. They started it first. How dare you say that we initiated it? How shameless. Shut up. You have to be polite to Director Hong. Hua Xiaoheng turned around and shushed them. You can't blindly accuse Director Hong of something he doesn't have. Wasn't he saying that Hong Kongquan was shameless? When the 27 staff members heard this, they couldn't help but laugh. Fine, their boss was even more ruthless and merciless than they were. They had to give it to him. Hong Kongquan didn't care about these verbal arguments. You say that the Americans ambushed us first and provoked us? But I have an internal document from the United States here that says that this cyber war was initiated by our side. The Americans passively fought back and suffered heavy losses. They're going to put this on your heads. Hong Kongquan looked at Hua Xiaoheng with a dark expression and asked sternly, how do you explain this, Major General Hua? Hua Xiaoheng's heart skipped a beat. He fell silent for a moment. The staff members inside did not have as much self-restraint as he did. When they heard the Americans accuse them of wrongdoing, they were furious. It was obviously the Americans who started it first. Director Hong, are you the minister of our country or the American minister? Why don't I understand what you mean? One of the staff members of the Special Operations Forces was very dissatisfied with Hong Kongquan's attitude. According to the American news was their guide. This was the director of our own country's Secret Service. Hong Kongquan watched with satisfaction as the staff of the Special Operations Forces flew into a rage. Only then did he say, "Was it really the Americans who started it? I don't believe it. I want to see the evidence." The corner of Hua Xiaoheng's eye twitched slightly. Hong Kongquan said directly, "According to the orders of the Senate and the Cabinet, the Secret Service is taking over the central control room and the server. As for who started it, we will naturally give you justice after we have fully evaluated the data in the server." Hua Xiaoheng finally understood everything. Hong Kongquan already knew that they had found the problem with the surveillance software. Therefore he acted first. The purpose of today's show was to get the surveillance software on the server. Hand the server over to Hong Kongquan? Wouldn't that be handing him the evidence of his falsification? Believe it or not, once Hong Kongquan took over the central control room, all the evidence against him would disappear into thin air in minutes. "I'm sorry, Director Hong. I am sorry that I cannot comply with this request." Hua Xiaoheng crossed his arms and looked at Hong Kongquan calmly. "This is one of the most important places in our country. Director Hong, your security level is not high enough. You can't even take one step through this door." This was the second update. A reminder for our monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 1041. Hua Xiaoheng calmly blocked the heavy door of the central control room and blocked Hong Kongquan's way. The corners of Hong Kongquan's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but secretly curse this cunning man. He could get the authorization overnight, but the security level wasn't something that could be obtained overnight. Hua Xiaoheng used this reason to stop him from entering. It was indeed a perfect reason, but Hong Kongquan didn't accept this reason. Not allowed? Then there really is a problem. Hong Kongquan spread his hands and his face darkened. "We won't hold back then." As soon as he finished speaking, the people from the Secret Service pulled out their pistols and aimed them at Hua Xiaoheng's chest. The staff in the central control room became even more furious, and they all rushed forward to block Hua Xiaoheng with their bodies and act as his meat shield. Of course, Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't let his subordinates take the bullet for him. He raised his right hand and made a stop gesture. The 27 staff behind him stopped in their tracks, and no one dared to disobey his order. Hua Xiaoheng stood in front of them and said calmly, "Don't move. They don't dare to shoot me, but I can't say that to you." The people from the Secret Service weren't ordinary people either. They were all people who dared to shoot and had killed people before. This group of old foxes might not dare to shoot Hua Xiaoheng, but it was possible for them to kill or injure the staff of the Special Operations Forces in a fit of anger. Hong Kongquan sneered. "Major General Hua, are you sure our people won't dare to shoot you?" He then straightened his face. "Everyone has the right to punish traitors who collude with foreign countries. I don't care if you are a major general or a private." He also raised his hand and was about to swing it down. Before he could say shoot, he heard a rough roar from behind his people. "Stop. People from the Secret Service, throw away your guns immediately. I will count to 3. Whoever still has a gun in their hand, I will shoot their hand." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a gunshot, and it was fired into the air to warn everyone present. Hua Xiaoheng breathed a sigh of relief. Zhou Qiyuan finally arrived with the fully armed gendarmerie. They wore the dark black military uniforms of the Special Operations Forces, and their armbands were a dark gold dragon circling in the clouds. One by one, the muzzles of a black semi-automatic submachine gun were aimed at the Secret Service. Their expressions were fierce and murderous, and they were even fiercer than the Secret Service. The corners of Hong Kongquan's eyes twitched uncontrollably. Who the F***ck was the one who reported this? He had clearly taken control of the guards at the entrance of the encampment, and even the sentries along the way had been ordered to stay put. Hua Xiaoheng folded his hands behind his back and nodded to Zhou Qiyuan and the military police on the other side of the crowd. "This is an important place for the country, and it is also an important place for our Special Operations Forces. If you do not pass the security clearance, please leave immediately. Otherwise, according to military law, we can kill you on the spot." Hong Kongquan's expression changed. "Hua Xiaoheng, don't be so arrogant. I have Speaker Long's authorization. Does the Special Operations Forces have no respect for Speaker Long? If they dared to kill them, they would have to see if they could get past Speaker Long. Xiaoheng stood with his back to the light. The lights in the central control room were too bright, and when they shone from behind, it was too bright to look directly at. His expression was hidden in the darkness, and even the Secret Service opposite him couldn't see his facial expression clearly. In fact, even if they could see it clearly, it didn't matter much because his expression didn't change. It was still calm and unfathomable. Xiaoheng was also weighing the pros and cons. Although there was military law that allowed him to kill on the spot, it didn't mean that he could use it on these people. First of all, the military law had countless preconditions such as special period, or natural and man-made disasters, or even warring parties. They didn't have a military law that authorized armed personnel to kill immediately just because they had exceeded their authority. After all, they were in the country and the Special Operations Forces were carefully evaluating and weighing the pros and cons. Therefore, it was absolutely impossible for them to carry out missions like they did abroad. As long as they could complete the mission, they would have much more authority than they did in the country. For a moment, the two sides faced off in the wide corridor at the entrance of the central control room. Xiaoheng refused to hand over the central control room, and Hong Kongquan refused to leave empty-handed. Zhou Qiyuan's heart skipped a beat, and he began to order the military police to surround the Secret Service in the middle. He raised his hand up and down, directing the military police to stand in position one by one. This posture was actually a sign language unique to the Special Operations Forces. He told Xiaoheng that when he came over, he had already informed General Ji. As long as they held on for another half an hour, when General Ji went to find Speaker Long, their crisis would be resolved. Xiaoheng quietly read Zhou Qiyuan's sign language and nodded slightly. His eyes quietly looked forward, and he didn't have the slightest intention of retreating. General Ji was woken up from his sleep. When he received Zhou Qiyuan's call, it was just a little past 4 o'clock. After listening to Zhou Qiyuan's call in a daze, General Ji suddenly woke up and sat straight up in bed. With a fierce expression, he threw the blankets off and said angrily to Zhou Qiyuan on the other side of the phone, "You guys hold on. I'll go find old Long right away." As he put on his clothes, he called Speaker Long's home and said loudly, "I'm old Ji from the military. I have something important to do. I need to see old Long right away. Tell him to get up immediately and wait for me in the reception room. I'll go over right now." At 4:30 in the morning, General Ji arrived at the reception room of Speaker Long's home. Speaker Long sat there waiting for him with a frown and a heavy expression on his face. "Old Long. What do you mean by this?" As soon as General Ji closed the door of the reception room, he opened fire at Speaker Long. "I told Xiaoheng that I wanted to monitor that Hong guy, and you also signed and agreed to it. Now you signed and allowed Hong to search our central control room. Are you suffering from Alzheimer's disease? You are the one suffering from Alzheimer's disease." Speaker Long was furious. He clenched his fists and stood up from the sofa. "I want to ask you, where is the evidence that you and Xiaoheng want to monitor Hong Kongquan? You have no evidence, yet you signed a report to fully monitor him. I signed it because I trusted you and Xiaoheng. If I had misjudged him, do you know how much damage it would have caused to the country?" General Ji blinked, a little confused. "Old Long, speak clearly. What do you mean by misjudged him?" There was a hidden meaning in his words. Speaker Long suppressed his anger and pointed at the sofa across from him. "Sit down and talk." Seeing that Speaker Long's face was purple with anger, General Ji had no choice but to sit down. He also suppressed his anger and said, "Can you speak now?" Speaker Long made a copy of the evidence that Hong Kongquan had shown him and threw it to General Ji. "See for yourself. This is the evidence that Hong Kongquan gave me. He accused Xiaoheng of being captured in the United States and rebelling. There is evidence and evidence. How could I not sign it? Old Ji, tell me honestly. When Xiaoheng went to the United States to rescue Tang Guirin, what happened? Had she lost contact with him before? After losing contact, was he captured by the CIA?" General Ji originally wanted to look at the document carefully, but when he heard Speaker Long say that it was about Xiaoheng being in danger in the United States, he suddenly didn't want to look at it anymore. He shook the document with a cold smile and said mockingly, "Old Long, you are on the Senate's side. You have to be impartial and I respect your professional attitude. But how can you accuse me of being captured in the United States and rebelling just based on this? I'd like to see if those cheese have the brains to talk nonsense in front of me." "You are threatening me." Speaker Long was even more displeased. Hua Xiaoheng only said that he was suspicious of Hong Kongquan and wanted to fully monitor him in order to obtain evidence to prove that there was something wrong with him. But Hong Kongquan directly said that Hua Xiaoheng was captured and rebelled. Who do you think I should believe? Of course I should believe the side with the evidence. Yes, old G. Hua Xiaoheng was a beloved general that you groomed, but Hong Kongquan was also your direct subordinate back then. It seems that you were really angry because you refused to take over the creation of the Special Operations Forces because of Hong Kongquan's retirement. He was right, you are biased against him and you have indeed made things difficult for him. Speaker Long shook his head. General G clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. I made things difficult for Hong Kongquan? He only knows how to flatter himself. Speaker Long was so angry that he laughed. All right, old G. Making things difficult for him is flattering him? You have such a sharp tongue. You can't do this. General G stood up from the sofa and paced around Speaker Long's reception room. You can't do this. Even if Hua Xiaoheng is also a problem, Hong Kongquan is not innocent. Aren't you afraid of putting him in charge of the central control room? General G didn't need to explain how important the central control room was to Speaker Long, did he? Speaker Long sighed. I'm also in a difficult position, old G. The current situation is that both sides are accusing the other of being a traitor and betraying national interests, but neither side has produced any concrete evidence to prove it. Hua Xiaoheng said that he found out from the Tan family that it was Hong Kongquan who set him up to go to the United States to rescue people. And Hong Kongquan said that the cyber war this morning was not a coincidence, but an agreement between Hua Xiaoheng and the United States. It was Hua Xiaoheng who used this opportunity to muddy the waters and leak who knows how many of our nation's secrets out of the country. Our nation absolutely cannot allow someone who was once in the enemy's camp to continue sitting in such an important position. Old G. Hong Kongquan produced the information from the United States and claimed that as long as we get the monitoring software of the central control room, we can prove what Hua Xiaoheng did. Speaker Long tried to reason with General G. Do you know how difficult it is for me and how painful it is for me? Hong Kongquan said that the intelligence obtained by the Secret Service shows that when Hua Xiaoheng was captured in the United States, he was only able to return unharmed after reaching an agreement with the Americans. Otherwise, with the capabilities of the Americans, how could Hua Xiaoheng fight alone on the home ground of the United States? Do you think this is a movie? This was the first watch. Today was the third watch. A reminder for your monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, your monthly votes were 2,700 plus the next watch. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the third watch. P.S. Thank you to Beth1211 for your 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Chapter 1042. General G was fuming at Speaker Long's words. Make a movie? Let me tell you, those soldiers in the movies are not as good as us real soldiers. Our Xiaoheng is able to fight against the entire United States of America with his own strength. Hang me if you don't agree. What's wrong with you? So what if they are Americans? Are our soldiers better than them? How weak are your knees? You can't even stand up with Dongfeng Express. General G was so indignant that he almost pointed at Speaker Long's nose and called him a coward. Speaker Long had never been criticized like this before, and his face immediately darkened. Old G, that's too much. That's too much. I, Old Long, have served my country for decades. I can touch my conscience and say this: if I betray my country, let me die a horrible death. My whole family will die a horrible death. General G was so angry just now that he yelled at Speaker Long. Seeing that Speaker Long was angry, he quickly raised his hand and nodded. Okay, I apologize. I was too impulsive just now. But where did Hong Kongquan get the materials from? Did the Americans give it to him or did he make it himself? That's the first thing I asked. Speaker Long's expression softened slightly. He understood General G's feelings, so he didn't continue talking about Hua Xiaoheng. Hong Kongquan said that it was information obtained by the Secret Service's field personnel in the United States. General G shook his head. I still don't believe what he said. Old Dragon, think carefully. What was the situation at that time? Using the power of an entire nation to deal with one person? Could the Americans find a needle in a haystack? Or could they check all 200 million people in the country? It was because our Xiaoheng was alone at the time that he was able to deal with the Americans. Not only did he successfully save Prime Minister Tan's daughter, but he was also able to escape unscathed. Speaker Long frowned. But he was indeed in danger at the time. He was ambushed. Although the video from the American television station had not been broadcasted within the Huaxia Empire, The senior officials of the country had all seen it. General Ji slapped his thigh. That's right. Xiaoheng was framed by someone. Think about it, we all saw that we were ambushed. Why would we be ambushed? Wasn't he betrayed? Otherwise, how did the Americans get the news? And who was the one who tried so hard to get Xiaoheng to go to the United States to save her? If you think about it this way, don't all the clues connect? Speaker Long looked at General Ji suspiciously. Are you saying that all of this is a conspiracy? Correct. General Ji quickly gave Speaker Long a thumbs up. Old Long, I don't want to criticize you, but you know nothing about our power or our central control room. If there's really something wrong with Xiaoheng, let me tell you, he doesn't need to use such a stupid method like cyber warfare to send messages. If he really has a problem, do you believe that we would still be counting the money for him even if he sold the country? How could it be Hong Kongquan's turn to criticize him? How would it be Hong Kongquan's turn to take over the central control room? Speaker Long pondered for a while, then asked in confusion. Then Xiaoheng, was he captured? Tell me the truth. I also promise that even if he is captured, I won't tell anyone about it. I'll find a decent way to get him out of the army. No. General Ji said firmly, I'll be honest with you. At that time, Xiaoheng suspected that someone in the country wanted to harm him, so after he escaped the ambush, he only contacted me. Other than me, no one else knew where he was. He definitely wasn't captured. I swear on my honor and my military rank. After a pause, seeing that Speaker Long still didn't say anything, he gritted his teeth and threw out another witness. Actually, if you don't believe me, you can ask Prime Minister Tan's daughter, Tan Guiran. As far as I know, Xiaoheng was always in contact with Tan Guiran when he was in the United States. She can prove that Xiaoheng was never captured. General Ji was originally the most powerful witness, but because of his extreme bias towards Xiaoheng, Speaker Long had no choice but to be cautious. He was worried that General Ji would be swayed by emotions and be blinded by his past. Speaker Long breathed a sigh of relief and closed his eyes. I'll naturally ask Tan Guiran. But today I'll believe half of you for now. Only half. General Ji wanted to grab Speaker Long's collar and shake him so hard that all the water in his brain would come out. What more do you want to believe me? Let me tell you, whether you believe me or not, the central control room cannot be taken over by Hong Kongquan. Speaker Long was also uncertain. If Hong Kongquan couldn't be trusted, then who would take over the central control room? I suggest that Zhou Qiyuan, the leader of the disciplinary team of the Special Operations Forces, lead the military police to take over the central control room. What do you think? Let's each take a step back. General Ji saw that he couldn't completely convince Speaker Long, so he settled for the next best thing. This way, Hong Kongquan wouldn't be able to take over the central control room, and Hua Xiaoheng would be excluded as well. Speaker Long looked thoughtful. That's fine. But Hua Xiaoheng must be investigated by the Secret Service. You know that the Secret Service and the Special Operations Forces keep each other in check. This is a rule that was set when we established the Special Operations Forces. General Ji sneered and objected. Of course not. Xiaoheng is still investigating Hong Kongquan. You want to hand him over to Hong Kongquan for investigation. Do you think he's not dying fast enough? Or do you want to verify that the hero who single-handedly fought against the entire United States fell at the hands of his own people to prove that we are stronger than the Americans? Especially when it comes to persecuting our own people. Speaker Long felt extremely awkward. Oh gee, that's not what I meant. You have to know that Hong Kongquan is in charge of the Secret Service, and he would never betray our country's interests. Just like what you just said about Hua Xiaoheng, it's the same logic. If Hong Kongquan wanted to betray us, he would have sold out our country's secrets a long time ago when Bai Yuxing defected. But look, did he do it? If he did, why would he be asking me for authorization to take over the central control room now? He's been the head of the Secret Service for so many years, and he's always been excellent in his assessments. There really isn't anything out of line. Other than Hua Xiaoheng's accusations against him, Speaker Long had no reason to suspect Hong Kongquan. Again, what he wanted to see was evidence, solid evidence. It wasn't a case of the two of them arguing with each other. You say there's a problem now, and I say there's a problem a long time ago, General Ji nodded. I understand what you mean, but even if we want to investigate Xiaoheng, we don't necessarily need the Secret Service to step in. Yes, I know that the Secret Service and the Special Operations Forces have a relationship that keeps each other in check, but this is a special situation. Because the head of the Secret Service is also on our list of suspects, I have a legitimate reason to refuse to hand Xiaoheng over to the Secret Service. Speaker Long's face darkened and he didn't say anything. General Ji asked again, Old Long, since you're so impartial, let me also ask you something. If you hand Xiaoheng over to Hong Kongquan, can you guarantee that Xiaoheng will walk out of the Secret Service unscathed? Think about it again. If you really hand Xiaoheng over to the Secret Service, regardless of whether he's innocent or not, this action is enough to cut off his future in the military. I'm afraid he'll have no choice but to retire. Speaker Long froze for a moment. If he's innocent, I'll speak up for him. Old Long, you've been in the Senate your entire life, facing the vast majority of the people, unlike us who face the military and our own troops. But in the military, the most important thing is that subordinates trust and obey their superiors from the bottom of their hearts. And for someone who's been suspected of treason, even if it's not the truth, it'll still be difficult for him to stay in the military. Because everyone won't know if they should trust him or not. And the biggest taboo for military strategists is to be overly suspicious. General Ji tried his best to persuade Speaker Long, hoping that he'd trust Xiaoheng more than Hong Kongquan. Speaker Long didn't speak for a full 5 minutes, then finally nodded with difficulty. How about this? Zhou Qiyuan will lead the military police to take over the central control room. But Xiaoheng will also be isolated and investigated. I trust you, Old Ji, so I'll hand Xiaoheng over to you and isolate him for investigation. What do you think? This was already the biggest concession Speaker Long could make. General Ji's anger finally dissipated slightly, and he patted Speaker Long's shoulder hard. That's more like it. Okay, don't worry, I'll interrogate Xiaoheng properly and make him explain everything that happened in the United States in full detail, leaving absolutely no doubt. That's good, Speaker Long murmured as he wiped the sweat from his forehead with a tissue. His heart was very heavy. He didn't know if his decision was right or wrong. At this time, Xiaoheng accused Hong Kongquan of being a traitor, and Hong Kongquan accused Xiaoheng of being a traitor. The two were almost evenly matched. And no matter which one of them had a problem, it would be a huge loss to the country. Of course, if Xiaoheng had a problem, the loss would be incomparable to the loss caused by Hong Kongquan. So from this perspective, Speaker Long's heart was still biased towards Xiaoheng, and he hoped that he wasn't the one who had a problem. This was the second night watch, and the monthly votes for 2,700 plus the second night watch had arrived. It was the third night watch today. A reminder for the monthly votes and recommendation votes. It was the third night watch at 7 p.m. Chapter 1043. Speaker Long was now inclined to believe that there was no problem with Xiaoheng. Naturally, the problem was the director of the Secret Service, Hong Kongquan, who was being monitored and investigated by Xiaoheng. However, they couldn't arrest people at the ministerial level unless they had concrete evidence or witnesses. General Ji couldn't wait any longer. He ignored Speaker Long's complicated feelings and picked up the phone with a smile. Old Long, quickly call Hong Kongquan and ask him to leave the Special Operations Forces as soon as possible. I'll also call Xiaoheng and ask him to hand over the central control room to Zhou Qiyuan and report to me for isolation and interrogation. How does that sound? Speaker Long nodded and said in a low voice, continue monitoring Hong Kongquan's side. General Ji grinned from ear to ear and wished he could give Speaker Long a V sign. He dialed Xiaoheng's number in high spirits. Xiaoheng, I have reached an agreement with Speaker Long regarding today's matter. Hand over the authority of the central control room to Zhou Qiyuan and come to me. I need to isolate and interrogate you. General Ji's eyes were smiling when he said this. Speaker Long glared at him. He was speechless and annoyed. He turned around and called Hong Kongquan. He tried to speak in a gentle tone. Director Hong, the security clearance required for the central control room is too high. I don't think it's appropriate for you to take over. Our authorization letter has exceeded the scope of what we can authorize, so it is illegal and is now officially invalid. Please leave the central control room of the Special Operations Forces immediately. You are not allowed to step into the central control room until you have obtained security clearance. Hong Kongquan's expression suddenly became very ugly. He didn't expect that the evidence he had carefully prepared would not be able to convince Speaker Long to do anything to Xiaoheng. Xiaoheng put down the phone and saw that Hong Kongquan's face was ashen. He curled his lips and raised his chin slightly. He said to Zhou Qiyuan, I will hand over the central control room to you. Everyone here is at your disposal. Anyone who doesn't meet the requirements will be killed on the spot if they approach this door. Don't make the mistake of being soft-hearted like I did. His words were directed at Zhou Qiyuan, but his sharp eyes swept over the faces of the Secret Service members one by one. He firmly remembered their faces. Zhou Qiyuan immediately saluted. Please rest assured, Chief. If anyone who doesn't meet the requirements wants to enter the central control room, they will have to step over my dead body. This was like a military pledge, expressing his determination to defend the central control room to the death. Hong Kongquan put down his phone and looked at the Special Operations Forces military police around him, who were eyeing him covetously. He then looked at the small pistols in his own hands and finally stomped his feet. Let's go. He led the Secret Service out of the Special Operations Forces headquarters like a gust of wind, just as they had arrived. Huo Xiaoheng nodded at Zhou Qiyuan, then turned to the 27 staff members in the central control room and said, I have something to attend to at General Ji's place for a few days. I'll leave this place to Colonel Zhou Qiyuan. You have to obey his orders. Roger, Chief. The 27 personnel in the room saluted in unison and watched Huo Xiaoheng leave. Zhou Qiyuan waved to the gendarmerie he brought with him. Go check if the people from the Secret Service have taken anything. I will go to the central control room to complete the handover. Yin Shixiang only found out about what happened that night the next morning. His heart was burning with anxiety, but he couldn't leave his post to investigate Huo Xiaoheng's troubles. Zhao Liangzi had been exiled by Huo Xiaoheng to a small island in the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. Even if he wanted to return, he couldn't without orders. After thinking about it, Yin Shixiang could only think of Gu Nianji, so he called her. Nianji, where are you? Yin Shixiang's first sentence was to ask. Gu Nianji was brought back to her suite in Hepingli by He Zhichu. He Zhichu knew that the Special Operations Forces had strict security measures there. Living there was even safer than living with him in school. Gu Nianji had just woken up and was still a bit groggy. She looked at Yin Shixiang sleepily and said, I'm at home. What's wrong? Yin Shixiang snorted and put on his Bluetooth headset to talk to Gu Nianji. He asked, What did you do yesterday? Gu Nianji was speechless. She thought about it and decided not to cause trouble for Huo Xiaoheng. She only said, I was sleeping at home. What's wrong? Yin Shixiang replied, Oh. He wondered if he could tell Gu Nianji about Huo Xiaoheng's news. After all, Huo Xiaoheng's matters couldn't be told to outsiders. Yin Shixiang hesitated for a while but still swallowed his words. After chatting with Gu Nianji for a while, Yin Shixiang said he had work to do and hung up. Gu Nianji wasn't surprised. This kind of thing happened often. She immediately nodded. Okay. Brother Xiong, remember to rest well and eat. Don't let Chi-Chi worry. Yin Shixiang saw that Gu Nianji could still think of Ma Chi-Chi at a time like this. His heart was filled with love and concern for her. His voice softened. I know. You too. Yin Shixiang's call had actually woken Gu Nianji up. She couldn't sleep anymore, so she picked up her phone from the bedside table and started scrolling through it. Hong Kongquan returned to the Secret Service and locked himself in his office. He began smoking in a depressed mood. The staff of the Secret Service all knew that the director was feeling uncomfortable, so they were very careful not to disturb him. Hong Kongquan smoked 3 cigarettes in one go before exhaling a mouthful of turbid air. He picked up his phone and wanted to call the invalid number, but found that it was the same as before. It wouldn't go through. Hong Kongquan pondered as he played with his phone. The person probably meant that he shouldn't take the initiative to contact him. Instead, the other party should contact Hong Kongquan. This was good. Hong Kongquan looked at the document on his desk and slammed his fist on the desk. He refused to believe that he still couldn't bring down Huo Xiaoheng after all this. However, this document had already been reviewed by Senior Speaker Long. Senior Speaker Long was the most impartial person, so he definitely wouldn't treat Huo Xiaoheng differently like General Ji. Hong Kongquan laughed coldly and locked the document in the file cabinet. Huo Xiaoheng arrived at General Ji's office and stood very straight. Huo Xiaoheng, Chief of the Special Operations Forces, reporting for duty. General Ji looked up at him. Come in and close the door. Huo Xiaoheng closed the door to General Ji's office and walked to General Ji's desk. He continued to stand in military posture. General Ji waved at him. Sit. Don't be nervous. Huo Xiaoheng was speechless. He wouldn't tell General Ji that he wasn't nervous at all. Sitting in the chair in front of General Ji's desk, General Ji took out the operation report that Huo Xiaoheng had written after returning from the United States and threw it in front of him. Tell me what exactly happened. Although General Ji had vouched for Huo Xiaoheng in front of Senior Speaker Long, because of the evidence and materials that Hong Kongquan had produced, General Ji carefully looked at the operation report that Huo Xiaoheng had written. With one look, he could also see that Huo Xiaoheng had concealed some parts of the operation report. Or rather, he had glossed over some parts that he hadn't mentioned in detail. It was somewhat suspicious. It wasn't that he had done anything wrong to the country or the military, but rather that General Ji didn't want his subordinates to hide anything from him. Hua Xiaoheng's experience in the United States was indeed difficult to explain in a few words. Moreover, he had indeed concealed some of his encounters. For example, he hadn't mentioned a single word about the collaboration with James, the director of the Asian Intelligence Division of the CIA. James was the highest-ranking informant in the CIA, even higher than the informant that Bai Yuxing had betrayed. Hua Xiaoheng had promised James that the deal between the two of them would only be known by the two of them and that he wouldn't betray the other. In their line of work, not everything could be announced. There were many secrets that could be taken to the grave. For example, the founder of their line of work refused to write his memoirs in his later years and didn't leave any political will after his death. There were also some contacts that he had developed, but with his death, they also lost contact with the Huaxia Empire. Because these people weren't Huaxia people, they only recognized this founder and only had one-way contact with him. They didn't have any intention of doing anything for the Huaxia Empire. The relationship between Hua Xiaoheng and James was already somewhat similar to that of a founder. He sat upright in front of General Ji and calmly maintained his silence. It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. A reminder for your monthly votes and recommendation votes. Chapter 1044. Why aren't you saying anything? General Ji slammed his hand on the table. Don't tell me that Hong Kanchuan's report is all true. Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. Xiaoheng, do you have any difficulties? General Ji frowned and looked at Hua Xiaoheng. In the beginning, our country only had the Secret Service as an intelligence agency. It dealt with spies within the country and dealt with intelligence overseas. It dealt with both sides at the same time. However, the Secret Service has inherent limitations because it is a public department of the country. This is enough to greatly restrict its operations abroad. Many times it can't respond in time and can't effectively protect national interests. Therefore, Speaker Long and I proposed that the military establish a new secret intelligence agency under the command of the military. It would only have the authority to gather intelligence on foreign countries. It would have more and more unrestricted authority than the Secret Service abroad. In exchange, we would not allow the Special Operations Forces to intervene in any domestic affairs. In other words, the Huaxia Empire's intelligence agency actually had two groups. They worked together and checked and balanced each other. At the same time, it ensured that the people above had multiple sources of intelligence and minimized the situation of being biased. Moreover, intelligence work was so important that it could affect the whole situation. They set it up like this to be more complete. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. If we want to intervene in domestic affairs, we must obtain permission and authorization from the military and the Senate. Just like the special cases that appeared during the two elections. Hua Xiaoheng's eyes flashed with sarcasm. General Ji didn't miss his expression and said awkwardly, "It's good that you know. So, is there anything else you can't say to me? We are comrades in the same trench." Hua Xiaoheng thought about it and said carefully, "General Ji, I've written everything that can be written in the report. I didn't hide anything." General Ji glanced at him and instantly understood what he meant. In other words, the rest couldn't be written in the report. There really was something he didn't know? General Ji's heart sank. He said to Hua Xiaoheng seriously, "Xiaoheng, you have to think this through. If you really hide anything or leave out anything, it will be very difficult for me to speak up for you." In front of Speaker Long, General Ji swore to protect him with his dignity and military rank, but that didn't mean he had to pretend that everything was fine. He trusted and vouched for him, not because he was his beloved general and direct subordinate, but because he believed that he was a person who had made great contributions to the country and the military, and he had never done anything wrong to the country or the military. If there really was a problem with Hua Xiaoheng, General Ji would never let it go. No matter how much his heart ached, he would still hand him over. Even Zhuge Liang could kill Ma Su without shedding tears, let alone him. To them, the most important thing was still the interests of the country and the military. General Ji was very clear about this. Hua Xiaoheng also understood very well that Hong Kongquan had caused such a ruckus. It seemed like the United States had made a move. The information obtained by the Secret Service's field personnel was not known if James had been discovered, or if it was the CIA's usual method. They often gave some specious things to muddy the waters of other countries and sow discord. Those who fell into the trap were not necessarily traitors or traitors. They might just be stupid people. But the problem was that when a stupid person did something wrong, it was no less destructive than when a bad person intentionally did something evil. Hua Xiaoheng's mind raced and he thought of someone. He said calmly, General G, are you sure you want me to write everything in the report? Aren't you afraid of causing disputes between countries? General G asked, is it that serious? I'll tell you. Listen carefully. If you think it's okay to write it in the report, I can add in the missing parts, Hua Xiaoheng said calmly. During my time in the United States, I killed a person. It was the former director of the CIA's Asian Intelligence Division, Sean. General G sucked in a breath of cold air before quickly coming back to his senses. He slapped the table excitedly. Sha. The intelligence genius who was once praised by the CIA to be unparalleled? Did he really die by your hands? After careful investigation, the time of this person's death happened to be the time when Hua Xiaoheng went missing in the United States. Hua Xiaoheng nodded slightly, his eyes dancing with joy. If you're not afraid of getting into trouble and not afraid of people finding out about this, then I'll write it in the operation report. From how he laid out the plan, how he approached, and how he made his move, he could write it all down. But the problem was, from the national level, could they really accept this fact? Because once it was written in the operation report, it meant that General G wasn't the only one who saw the news. There would be many more people in the future. The more people who knew, the more likely it was to be leaked. Hua Xiaoheng was well aware of this, so he didn't think about hiding Gu Nianji's identity as the pink piggy forever. He sealed that piece of information only to wait for the storm to pass before revealing it to the higher-ups. But his one-way connection with James would never be revealed. As expected, General G thought about it for a long time, then waved his hand. I understand. Xiaoheng, I trust you completely. Sean's death, you explained to me the ambiguity in the operation report, and it also proved that the information Hong Kong's people obtained was very likely the enemy stirring up trouble with the intention of sowing discord within our internal organization. General G is wise. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. But how are you going to explain to Speaker Long? Regarding Sean's death, it's up to you to decide whether or not you can reveal it. If the United States really finds out in the future, I'm willing to pay any price for my country. What nonsense are you talking about? When the two armies fought, Sean couldn't defeat you, so he deserved to die. So many of our intelligence personnel died at the hands of the Americans. Did we seek justice from them? In the past, our skills were inferior, so we had to swallow our losses. Now that their skills are inferior, they should be the ones to swallow their losses. General G valued Hua Xiaoheng more and more. Don't worry, you can rest here with me for the next few days. When the election is over, I'll talk to Speaker Long again. Hua Xiaoheng shook his head. I still have a lot of things to do. General G, can you give me a computer that can be connected to the network? He had just erased the AI program in the surveillance software, so he hadn't completely restored the data hidden by the AI program. He could take advantage of the period when Speaker Long asked General G to isolate and investigate him to concentrate on finding the hidden data here. As a result, Hong Kong's carefully planned operation almost ended in failure. He didn't get control of the central control room, nor did he have the opportunity to erase the AI language instructions in the surveillance software. Hua Xiaoheng should have already discovered the problem with the surveillance software, but fortunately the United States reacted quickly. A cyber war greatly hindered Hua Xiaoheng's ability to restore the data. Now he was taken away by General G for some unknown purpose. But as long as he didn't come into contact with the central control room, he should be safe. Hong Kong touched the tracking chip on the back of his neck, his expression as dark as the bottom of a pot. He had never thought of betraying his country. He only wanted to get back the honor and power that belonged to him. Gu Nianji hadn't been able to contact Hua Xiaoheng for the past 2 days. After hearing from Yin Shixiang, she knew that Hua Xiaoheng had probably gone on a mission, so she was slightly relieved. However, it was boring to stay at home alone, so she decided to go to the Senate and continue working as an intern in Speaker Long's secretariat to accumulate some experience. He Jichu saw that Hua Xiaoheng had concealed Gu Nianji's incident from that night in a timely manner, and the people in the United States were still confused, so he didn't object. Because she had already rested at home for 2 days, the wound on her face should have healed by now, so she didn't wear a mask and went to work. Special Assistant Yang was still on a long vacation. The new Special Assistant who had replaced Special Assistant Yang was surnamed Zhuang, so they all called him Special Assistant Zhuang. He was 2 years older than Special Assistant Yang, married a long time ago, and had a child who was already in elementary school. Special Assistant Zhuang was a very modest person and usually got along well with everyone in the Senate. He and Special Assistant Yang had come to the Senate Secretariat the same year, but Special Assistant Yang had been more capable and had been promoted faster than him. but in the secretariat he was the only other person besides Special Assistant Yang. When Gu Nianji came to work, Special Assistant Zhuang quickly went up to greet her and asked with concern, "Little Gu, the wound on your face is healed?" He glanced at Gu Nianji and noticed that her skin was rosy and delicate. It didn't look like she had been beaten up that day at all. "It should be completely healed." Gu Nianji nodded and smiled. "It's fine. Thank you for your concern, Special Assistant Zhuang." "That's good." Special Assistant Zhuang breathed a sigh of relief and also smiled. "If a little girl like you had been disfigured because of this incident, we wouldn't have let that Chao spokesperson get away with it." "I'm so happy to hear that, Special Assistant Zhuang. I was worried that a little intern like me would be bullied for nothing." Gu Nianji smiled and was also very polite to Special Assistant Zhuang. Special Assistant Zhuang smiled and chatted with her for a bit before leading her to another place. It was a small, semi-independent office. The entire outer wall of the office was made of glass, so she could see the various small workrooms in the lobby. Gu Nianji was both surprised and happy. She had her own private office. Special Assistant Zhuang explained with a smile, "Speaker Long entrusted you to me and said that you are a specialist in the legal field. I thought about it and realized that our secretariat does have some legal matters that need to be handled by a specialist. However, these legal documents all have a certain level of confidentiality and can't be placed in the lobby. Although you are an intern and normally don't have your own private office, your work is special, so I asked Speaker Long to arrange this small and used office for you. From now on, those legal documents will be placed here for you. Make sure you take care of them properly." Gu Nianji secretly praised Special Assistant Zhuang for being a good person. He was clearly giving her a discount, but he still acted as if he had no choice to do so to show that he wasn't abusing his power for personal gain. But then again, legal matters were indeed Gu Nianji's specialty, and it was also her interest. She had never thought about being a secretary for the rest of her life. After Special Assistant Zhuang arranged an office for her, he took her to see Speaker Long. At the door of Speaker Long's office, she saw a few tall men in navy suits clustered around a slightly shorter, stocky man. There was also a beautiful woman standing next to the man. It was Tang Guiran. Special Assistant Zhuang quickly stepped forward and said to the shorter man, "Director Hong, how can I help you?" The man turned to look at Special Assistant Zhuang and said somewhat impatiently, "Miss Tan and I were both invited by Speaker Long. It's almost time, but Speaker Long seems to still be in a meeting." He looked at his watch and was a bit annoyed. His time was also very precious. Gu Nianji's eyes flashed. "Director Hong?" She quickly went through the names of all the cabinet ministers in her mind and remembered that the only minister with the surname Hong was Hong Kongquan from the Secret Service. He was the person Tang Guiran said had suggested Hua Xiaoheng go to the United States to rescue her. But why would Hong Kongquan appear in the Senate with Tang Guiran? And he even said that Speaker Long had invited them? This was the first update. Today was the second update. A reminder for your monthly votes and recommendation votes. At 7 p.m. the second update. Dear friends, please update tomorrow. P.S. Thank you to the Alliance leader Fish G for tipping 50,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you to the Alliance leader Enigma Yangxi for tipping 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Thank you to the Alliance leader Beth 1211 for tipping 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. P.S. Intelligence agencies all have external functions. I didn't expect that some friends didn't know much about these agencies, so I gave them some general knowledge. There were actually many intelligence agencies in the Huaxia Empire. Simplifying them here into 2 agencies was done artistically. Chapter 1045. Gu Nianji thought about how Hua Xiaoheng had asked Fan Jian to send her away right after the cyber war ended 2 nights ago. Then Hua Xiaoheng had disappeared as well. But this time, she didn't chase after people to ask about Hua Xiaoheng's whereabouts like she did in Germany. A fall into the pit, a gain in your wit. That was exactly what she was talking about. Gu Nianji thought about it and couldn't help walking up to them. "Are the 2 of you here to wait for Speaker Long? Please wait in the guest room over there. Once Speaker Long's meeting is over, he will be able to see the 2 of you immediately." No matter what, Gu Nianji planned to send the 2 of them away first and then find a way to get some information out of Tang Guiran. Hong Kongquan looked at Gu Nianji coldly and ignored her. He frowned at Special Assistant Zhuang. "Give me an exact time." Tang Guiran felt that Hong Kongquan was being too rude and asked Gu Nianji embarrassedly, "Miss Gu, are you here to see Speaker Long as well?" Gu Nianji smiled and shook her head. "I am an intern here. I am responsible for entertaining you." Then she turned to Special Assistant Zhuang and said, Secretary Zhuang, how about we invite Director Hong and Miss Tan to sit in the guest room over there? Special Assistant Zhuang was only a special assistant. He was still a step away from becoming a secretary. However, when Gunyanji called him that, it touched his heart. Reaching the position of secretary in the secretariat was the highest he could go. Special Assistant Yang had been a special assistant for 5 years and still hadn't advanced to become a secretary. Special Assistant Zhuang nodded with a smile. Nianji, help entertain Director Hong and Miss Tan. I will go check on Speaker Long's situation. Hong Kongquan had no choice. Seeing that Tan Guirin had already followed Gunyanji to the guest room, he had no choice but to follow. Gunyanji and Tan Guirin acted like they knew each other very well. She smiled and asked quietly, Miss Tan, what time did you have an appointment with Speaker Long? 9 o'clock. Tan Guirin frowned slightly. Actually, it's still 10 minutes away. I don't know why Director Hong is in such a hurry. Gunyanji replied, Oh. She didn't dare compliment Director Hong's character anymore. She curled her lips almost imperceptibly and led Tan Guirin into the guest room. Originally, she had wanted to get some information out of her, but she saw Hong Kongquan follow her in and say to her rudely, Miss Gu, can you go see if Speaker Long's meeting is over? We have our own matters to attend to, but you can't meet us on time. Gunyanji wasn't so polite to Hong Kongquan. She turned around and asked calmly, Director Hong, may I ask what time Speaker Long arranged to meet with you? Hong Kongquan paused for a moment and said, 9 o'clock. He raised his wrist and pointed at his watch. Look, what time is it now? 10 minutes to 9. Gunyanji raised an eyebrow. The agreed time hasn't arrived yet. I don't understand why Director Hong is complaining that our Speaker Long is not punctual. Just 10 minutes. Hong Kongquan's face darkened. He realized that this insignificant intern had such a glib tongue that he was able to throw a bucket of dirty water at him. He clasped his hands behind his back in displeasure. When did I ever complain about Speaker Long being unpunctual? Don't take it out of context. Gunyanji shrugged. You just said it yourself. You have an appointment but you can't meet us on time. Isn't that complaining that our Speaker Long is unpunctual? Actually, you are the one who is unpunctual. Hong Kongquan finally remembered who Gunyanji was. He couldn't help squinting. Aren't you the girl under Hua Xiaoheng's guardianship? Why are you interning at the Senate? I remember that you studied law. Director Hong has a good memory. Gunyanji mocked him with a half-smile. Hua Xiao is no longer my guardian. Your memory must have stopped at 7 years ago, right? Besides, I have already graduated with a master's degree. It's only right for me to intern at the Senate. Hong Kongquan was displeased by Gunyanji's retort. He pursed his lips and ignored her. He sat on the sofa alone and picked up the newspaper on the coffee table in front of him to flip through it. Tan Guirin didn't like the atmosphere there. She stood up and asked Gunyanji, Miss Gu, may I ask if there is a bathroom here? Gunyanji's heart skipped a beat. This was a good opportunity. She quickly said, It's not far from here. I'll take Miss Tan there. Tan Guirin nodded. Thank you. Hong Kongquan's entire face was hidden behind the newspaper, so Gunyanji couldn't see his face at all. Gunyanji didn't care about Hong Kongquan's attitude. She took Tan Guirin out, turned left and walked straight. After 2 turns, they arrived at the women's bathroom. Once the door was closed, there would be no surveillance. Gunyanji waited for Tan Guirin to go in before opening each cubicle in the bathroom to make sure there was no one else there. She smiled and asked, Miss Tan, did Speaker Long ask you to come alone or with Director Hong? Tan Guirin entered a cubicle and locked the door. She took care of her own business before coming out. As she washed her hands, she said to Gunyanji, I don't know about Director Hong's situation. I heard that Speaker Long personally called me and asked me to come at 9 this morning. He said he had something to ask me. Then wasn't Director Hong with you? Gunyanji asked in surprise. According to Tan Guirin, Speaker Long asked her to come alone. Tan Guirin didn't understand what was going on either. She muttered, I met Director Hong at the entrance of the Senate building. He said he happened to have something to see Speaker Long, so he came with me. So that means Speaker Long only asked you to come alone. Gunyanji was so angry that she laughed. Hong Kongquan was such a dramatic person. He even wanted to ride on Tan Guirin's coattails. From his tone just now, Gunyanji thought it was Speaker Long who asked him to come. He was still muttering to himself, not understanding how the two of them got together, so she hadn't been wrong. Someone was trying to ride on someone else's coattails. Gunyanji handed Tan Guirin a tissue to wipe her hands and asked with a smile, Speaker Long asked you to come here because he wanted you to work in the Senate Secretariat? That's how I was tricked by Speaker Long to come here. Tan Guirin also smiled and took the tissue to wipe her hands. She threw it in the trash can and said, I don't have Miss Gu's skills. I only know how to play the violin. Speaker Long wouldn't want me to work here. Speaker Long asked me to come here today because he wanted to ask me about how I was rescued by Major General Hua in the United States. Gu Nianji's heart tightened, but she maintained a curious smile on her face. Oh? Why would Speaker Long ask about it? Major General Hua's mission was highly confidential. Also, didn't Hua Xiao write a report to them after he returned? Tan Guirin also frowned when she said that. She recalled that Hua Xiaoheng had said almost the same thing to her in the United States, especially when he had met with that American. I don't know about that either. Actually, I don't know much about Major General Hua in the United States. In short, I'll answer whatever Speaker Long asks. If I can't answer, then I'll just shut up. Tan Guirin's thinking was very simple. Gu Nianji thought that as long as Hong Kongquan wasn't around, it would be better for her to accompany Speaker Long and listen to Tan Guirin talk about the United States. Who knew when this silly girl would say something inappropriate? Gu Nianji didn't dare take the risk. At that moment, she was glad that she had come to work today. Otherwise, she didn't know what kind of big mistake would have occurred. Gu Nianji looked at her watch. It was only 2 minutes to 9. She simply grabbed Tan Guirin's arm. It's almost time. I'll take you to see Speaker Long. Tan Guirin froze for a moment. She walked forward with Gu Nianji holding her arm. Confused, she said, but Director Hong is still in the reception room? Speaker Long didn't invite Director Hong, so of course I'll take you to see Speaker Long first. Gu Nianji insisted that Hong Kongquan hadn't received an invitation from Speaker Long and didn't give him any chance to explain. By the time Hong Kongquan was restless in the reception room and realized that it was already 10 minutes past 9, Gu Nianji had already brought Tan Guirin to stand in front of Speaker Long's desk. This was the second watch. Today was the second watch. A reminder for your monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 1046. Speaker Long's timing was still very precise. The regular meeting was held at 8:30 in the morning and ended in half an hour, just in time for Tan Guirin to ask about the situation in the United States. However, when Gu Nianji came in with Tan Guirin, Speaker Long was still stunned. His gaze instinctively looked at Gu Nianji's face, the side of her face that had been beaten swollen by the spokesman of the office of the Prime Minister. Her skin was as smooth as jade and without a single blemish. Of course, there were no signs of swelling from the beating. Speaker Long nodded with relief and said very kindly, Nianji, are your injuries all healed? Tan Guirin's heart skipped a beat and she quickly looked at Gu Nianji with a pleading expression. In order to prevent Gu Nianji from suing her parents, she had told her the most shameful experience of her life. Gu Nianji understood what she meant and winked at her, then looked at Speaker Long with a smile. Thank you for your concern, Speaker Long. My injuries are all healed. With Dr. Chin from the military treating me, what else do you have to worry about? She had intentionally dragged Chen Lai out to prove that it was all thanks to the doctor that her injuries had healed so quickly and perfectly. Speaker Long nodded in realization. Yes, that kid Chen Lai is really amazing. Nianji, I'm relieved that you're fine. He also didn't want a beautiful girl to have her face ruined at his place. Even if he stood up for her and sued the spokesperson who hit her, she would never be able to recover her disfigured face. Fortunately, she was fine. Speaker Long felt that this was the only good news in the past few days. Recently, all kinds of accidents had occurred frequently, and he was almost badly battered. Speaker Long looked at Tan Guirin and smiled kindly. Miss Tan, thank you for agreeing to see me. He was looking for Tan Guirin to clarify some things with her, not to use his status to pressure her. Because Tan Guirin looked a little uneasy, Speaker Long was worried that he had scared her. Tan Guirin's uneasiness wasn't because of Speaker Long's call, but because of Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji's hand pressed firmly on her shoulder as she pulled Tan Guirin to sit on the 2 soft stools in front of Speaker Long's desk. She said to Speaker Long, Miss Tan said that you invited her to speak with you. I saw that it was about time, so I sent her in. As she spoke, Gu Nianji assumed the posture of taking notes and said to Speaker Long in a very familiar manner, Go ahead and ask, I'll record it for you. If Speaker Long wanted to ask questions, he definitely couldn't ask them alone. Every job he did had to be recorded, even if it was just interrogating Tan Guirin. Speaker Long had originally wanted to ask Special Assistant Zhuang to help him take notes, but seeing how enthusiastic Gu Nianji was, and considering that she worked in law, it would be more appropriate for her to take notes. Because Speaker Long wasn't sure if this matter would lead to legal disputes in the future, it was better to prepare for a rainy day. Speaker Long reminded Gu Nianji, remember to record according to the law. All the information I have here is legally binding. Gu Nianji nodded furiously. She knew this, so she pretended to be familiar with him and recommended herself. Speaker Long saw that Gu Nianji was smart and sensible, so he didn't say anything more. He turned to look at Tan Guirin and began to ask her, Miss Tan, I specifically asked you to come here today to ask you about your disappearance in the United States. Tan Guirin's heart sank. She didn't really want to talk about this at all. She looked at Gu Nianji pleadingly. Gu Nianji didn't look at her. She lowered her head to take notes, but from the corner of her eye she saw Tan Guirin's expression. Gu Nianji's eyes flashed, and after writing a few words she looked up and said, Speaker Long, I saw online about Miss Tan's disappearance in the United States. I remember that Prime Minister Tan was still in the midst of the election at the time, and because of Miss Tan's disappearance, he even gained a wave of sympathy online. Tan Guirin was so embarrassed that she couldn't even raise her head. Speaker Long was slightly taken aback. When he looked at Tan Guirin again, there was already some pity in his eyes. His voice became even more amiable. Miss Tan, you don't have to feel burdened. I'm not asking you what exactly happened. That is your personal privacy and I completely understand. Tan Guirin nodded slightly and said quietly, Thank you, Speaker Long, for your understanding. Gu Nianji secretly gave Tan Guirin a thumbs up. If she had said this to a lawyer, the lawyer on the other side would have completely torn apart a little white rabbit like Tan Guirin. But it just so happened to be very suitable for Speaker Long. Because Speaker Long came from a political career, he was extremely particular about privacy and human rights. Tan Guirin indicated that she didn't want to talk about the details of her disappearance, so Speaker Long had to respect her wishes. Moreover, Gu Nianji added fuel to the fire on the side to flatter him. Miss Tan, don't worry. Our Speaker Long isn't the kind of person who asks for gossip. When he asks you questions he will ask them openly, and not the kind of private things that will embarrass you. Speaker Long almost laughed out loud at Gu Nianji's words. He really hadn't misjudged this young girl. Her words were full of needles and every word she said was a trap for him. She was afraid that he would ask something he shouldn't ask. He didn't feel offended. Instead, he admired Gu Nianji even more. That's right, Miss Tan. I will ask honest questions, and I won't be like those unscrupulous reporters who forget their own journalistic ethics in order to gain attention. Speaker Long thought of Kai Songyin and couldn't help feeling even more emotional. Although Kai Songyin wasn't a good media person herself, the daughter she raised was indeed very different from her. At least Speaker Long didn't hate Tan Guirin, but he hated Kai Songyin's manipulation of the media. Gu Nianji also thought of Kai Songyin, but Tan Guirin didn't seem to notice. She had a serious expression on her face as she kept nodding. Speaker Long, you are so right. I rarely watch the news because my mommy said that most of the news is fake, so I don't need to watch it. So that's what Mrs. Tan said? Speaker Long clasped his hands and rested them on the desk as he asked with great interest. Gu Nianji held back her laughter and brought the topic back without a trace. Mrs. Tan does things that are related to herself well and accurately. I really have nothing to say about it. That's why when I only watched the news, I only knew that Miss Tan went missing in the United States and was later found by our people. Wasn't there news on TV that Miss Tan was sent back by our people on a private plane? It was that piece of news that almost broke Gu Nianji down. She remembered herself crying so hard that she couldn't control herself, and her heart ached. However, on the surface she was already able to remain indifferent. When she mentioned that piece of news, it was as if it had nothing to do with her. In reality, neither of the two people here knew how much that piece of news had affected her. Tan Guirin revealed a shy expression and mustered the courage to whisper, Yes, I have to thank Major General Hua. If it weren't for him, I would definitely have died in the hands of the American kidnappers. Speaker Long also became serious and continued the conversation between the two people. Miss Tan, do you still remember what happened after you were rescued by Major General Hua? To be honest, I saw the live broadcast of the American police rescuing you. Was Major General Hua among those who rescued you? Tan Guirin remembered that scene clearly. She thought for a moment, then bit her lower lip and said, Can I say these things? At the time, Major General Hua instructed me to keep this matter highly confidential. Speaker Long thought about it. You can say it here. I will treat it as top secret. As he spoke, he glanced at Gu Nianji. Nianji, your security clearance? Gu Nianji immediately said, Speaker Long, my security clearance is enough. If you don't believe me, you can check it immediately. If I'm lying, you can shoot me on the spot. Hua Xiaoheng had told her that one of the purposes of marrying her was to quickly increase her security clearance. She remembered it clearly and believed that Hua Xiaoheng wouldn't lie to her about this. Speaker Long nodded. Of course I will check it. However, he didn't harp on this matter and turned to look at Tan Guoren. I will only ask you a few questions. If you can answer them, answer them. If you can't, then don't speak. Is that okay? Tan Guoren nodded firmly. Yes, Speaker Long. Speaker Long considered it and asked, that night, when you were rescued by the American police, where was Major General Hua? Was he with you or? Tan Guoren thought that since Speaker Long had already seen the situation on TV, it shouldn't be impossible to say. But before she said it, she still looked at Gunyanji carefully. Speaker Long saw this look and his eyes darkened as he stared at Gunyanji. It was unclear what he was thinking. Gunyanji secretly groaned. As expected, people like Tan Guoren were double-edged swords. When you used her naive and innocent to trick others, she would also use her naive and innocent to trick you. Fortunately, Gunyanji had studied Tan Guoren thoroughly and had prepared several ways to deal with her. She said calmly, Miss Tan, don't be afraid. What kind of person is Speaker Long? He said he wouldn't say anything and he won't say anything. She discreetly explained that Tan Guoren was secretly looking at her as Tan Guoren was worried about her privacy being exposed. Tan Guoren sighed in relief and looked at Speaker Long. She whispered. If Speaker Long watched the TV, he would know that Major General Hua was surrounded by the American police when he rescued me. They thought he was a kidnapper. The corners of Gunyanji's mouth twitched as she quickly recorded it. And then? Speaker Long was most concerned about whether Hua Xiaoheng was captured. Those American police were very annoying. They wouldn't listen to my explanations and were in a hurry to capture Major General Hua. But Major General Hua was very powerful and he escaped quickly. Tan Guoren wanted to show that Hua Xiaoheng was very powerful, so she added, and he went to my home in Long Island to visit me the next day. He went to see you the next day? There were so many American police officers that night, and there seemed to be soldiers as well. Didn't he get caught? Then how was his mental and physical state? Speaker Long asked in detail. No, Major General Hua is so powerful. How could the American military and police catch him? They're not on the same level at all. Tan Guoren spread her hands and blurted out, but he was slightly injured. It's just a superficial wound, nothing serious. Tan Guoren seemed to have transformed into Hua Xiaoheng's fangirl and was full of respect and admiration for his abilities. Speaker Long was speechless. Why did he suddenly feel that his confidence in Hua Xiaoheng wasn't as much as that of a silly girl like Tan Guoren? This was the first night watch. Today was the third night watch. A reminder for the monthly votes and recommendation votes. Special recommendation votes. Today is Monday, so recommendation votes are very important. Monthly votes of 3,000 plus updates at 1 p.m., and the third night watch will be at 7 p.m. P.S. Thank you to Beth1211 for tipping 10,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Chapter 1047. Speaker Long rubbed his right hand shamefully and asked with a smile, but from the time you were rescued to the time you returned, was it 1 or 2 months? Has Major General Hua been in contact with you all this time? Yes. He visits me every few days, Tan Guoren blurted out, then looked at Gunyanji guiltily. Speaker Long completely understood what she meant and also dispelled the doubts he had about Gunyanji earlier. He smiled and said, Miss Tan, don't worry. Miss Gu has already broken up with Major General Hua, right? Yanji? Because of Gunyanji's reminder, Tan Guoren didn't mention why Hua Xiaoheng went to her home in Changdao. Of course she didn't mention James either. She actually didn't know the name of the person Hua Xiaoheng met, but Speaker Long was satisfied with her words. Gunyanji's heart was filled with jealousy. But she also knew that this wasn't the time to be jealous. Moreover, Hua Xiaoheng went to the United States to save Tan Guoren on a mission. She really didn't believe that with Hua Xiaoheng's professional standards, he would flirt around like 007 in the movies. Moreover, in Speaker Long's eyes, she and Hua Xiaoheng had broken up, so she had no right to be jealous. Therefore, Gunyanji tried her best to maintain a calm expression. She tried her best to focus her thoughts and not limit them to the jealousy between the two of them. After all, she was now facing Tan Guoren, a bomb that could explode at any moment. Gunyanji's head hurt as soon as she thought about this. She could tell that Tan Guoren wasn't someone who could hide secrets. If she could get information out of her today, others could get it out of her tomorrow. Also, Tan Guirin didn't seem like someone who knew what was important. With Gu Nianji by her side today, she might be able to understand what to say and what not to say. Without Gu Nianji by her side in the future, how could she be vigilant about what to say and what not to say? Gu Nianji couldn't follow Tan Guirin around 24 hours a day. Wouldn't she be able to live her own life? So what should she do to solve the problem of Tan Guirin being saved by Hua Xiaoheng once and for all? She didn't even have to worry that Tan Guirin would say something she shouldn't if someone tried to get information out of Tan Guirin. So many thoughts flashed through Gu Nianji's mind, but it only took a moment. She met Speaker Long's gaze and suddenly remembered that the senator's greatest ability was to brainwash people. Every speech they gave was basically a brainwashing session. The more thorough the brainwashing, the more votes they would get. As for Tan Guirin, could she use the same method? In fact, brainwashing is a popular term. The real academic explanation was to reconstruct memories in the target's mind until the target completely accepted and believed the reconstructed facts of the outside world. Then, the reconstructed memories would be regarded as the truth, completely covering the truth itself. Gu Nianji didn't want Tan Guirin to remember the truth of this matter, so she wanted to try to help her reconstruct her memory. In a flash, Gu Nianji had already found a solution. This was relatively advanced knowledge in psychology. Gu Nianji had attended psychology classes and read some textbooks when she was an undergraduate. But she had never tried it on anyone else. In a moment of desperation, she didn't know if it would work, but if she didn't try, she would never succeed. Gu Nianji made up her mind and met Speaker Long's gaze with a smile. Yes, we are not in a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship right now. She could clearly feel Tan Guirin breathe a huge sigh of relief. Tan Guirin should be in a relaxed state of mind right now, so Gu Nianji took the opportunity to stare into her eyes and ask, "But Miss Tan, those police officers saw you being held hostage by kidnappers. In order to catch the kidnappers, didn't they continue to question you?" Of course they did. Tan Guirin recalled the American police officers and the CIA who visited her house from time to time. She pouted. They were so annoying. I didn't tell them who the kidnappers were, but they said I had Stockholm Syndrome. How could I not know what was good for me? Major General Huo wasn't the person who kidnapped me. I told them so many times but they just didn't believe me. Gu Nianji's professional habits kicked in. She couldn't help but ask before Speaker Long could speak, "You told the American police and the CIA that the person who came to rescue you was Major General Huo?" This was getting out of hand. Wouldn't the Americans be furious? Speaker Long also became serious. "Tan Guirin, did you really say that?" Tan Guirin quickly waved her hands and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No, you misunderstood. At the time, I didn't know he was Major General Huo. When he rushed into that small building to rescue me, he only said that my father had sent him to rescue me. Before that, I didn't know him at all. Later, when he came to visit me, he didn't say who he was, so how would I know? I only emphasized to the American military and police that the person who came to rescue me that night was not the kidnappers. As she spoke, she still felt very wronged. But they just didn't believe me and kept saying I had Stockholm Syndrome. I was so angry. Later, when they came to find me, I didn't say anything. They couldn't force me anyway. The corners of Tan Guirin's mouth turned up. She was very proud of her actions. Gu Nianji sighed in relief and gave her a thumbs up. "Miss Tan, you're so amazing." Then she asked, "So many American police and the CIA went to your home to question you. Did you happen to run into Major General Huo?" As Gu Nianji spoke, she looked at Speaker Long from the corner of her eye. As expected, Speaker Long was listening carefully. From his body language, she could tell that Speaker Long was very interested in this question. And it was the most interesting topic out of all the questions today. Gu Nianji's eyes turned and suddenly understood why Speaker Long wanted to question Tan Guirin. Speaker Long suspected that Hua Xiaoheng had inappropriate contact with the enemy when he was in the United States, right? After confirming this, the focus of Gu Nianji's brainwashing became even more obvious. "Miss Tan, when you returned to your home in the United States, did the American military and CIA come to find you?" "Yes." "What did you tell them?" "I told them that the person wasn't the kidnappers and asked them to stop asking. The real kidnappers had already been killed by that person." "Then did you know who that person was at that time?" Tan Guirin thought about it. "I don't know." Gu Nianji didn't stop and continued to ask, "The American military and CIA came to find you because of the kidnappers?" "Yes." "Then did you tell them who the kidnappers were?" "No. I don't know them." Tan Guirin's answer was much faster than before. Gu Nianji then asked in a different direction, "When the American military and CIA came to find you, Did they encounter the person who saved you? No. That person is very powerful. Every time he appears, no one knows, Tanguerin answered without hesitation. That means he has his own freedom of movement, his own residence, and hiding in the dark to protect you, right? Yes, he has his own freedom of movement, his own residence, and hiding in the dark to protect me. Tanguerin repeated Gunyenji's questions with almost every command and action. Speaker Long saw that Gunyenji was asking about the situation from all angles and couldn't help admiring her even more. She was a good seedling. He didn't need to say it out loud, but she could consider everything for him. She was so thoughtful. Speaker Long felt that even if he asked personally, he wouldn't be as detailed as Gunyenji, as expected of an outstanding courtroom debate talent. Under Speaker Long's intense gaze, Tanguerin became more and more nervous, and she became more and more familiar with Gunyenji's questions and answers. After 15 minutes, Gunyenji stopped repeating questions from all angles. In those 15 minutes, she only kept emphasizing one fact. Although the American military and CIA kept interrogating Tanguerin, she didn't know Hua Xiaoheng's identity at the time, so she didn't reveal any secrets. And Hua Xiaoheng had never encountered the American military and CIA with his own professionalism and vigilance, let alone something as shocking as being captured. Under Gunyenji's repeated questioning and guidance, Tanguerin's memories unknowingly developed in the direction Gunyenji wanted. It was the second night, and the monthly votes and 3,000+ night passes had arrived. It was the third night today. A reminder for your monthly and recommendation votes. Special recommendation votes. Today is Monday, so recommendation votes are very important. It was the third night at 7 p.m. Chapter 1048. Tanguerin had always been a simple-minded and pure-hearted person. She believed whatever others said and was stubbornly persistent in her beliefs. Her experience in the United States was extremely cruel and because of Hua Xiaoheng, so she remembered it longer than other things. However, although it had been a long time, it had been so long that sometimes her memory would be blurred. Therefore, Gunyenji's reconstruction of the facts greatly deepened Tanguerin's impression of the truth. It made her unwittingly treat Gunyenji's questions and answers as her own logical and organized memories, and she firmly committed them to memory. Not only Tanguerin, but even Speaker Long, who was listening on the side, unconsciously treated Gunyenji's questions as the truth of Hua Xiaoheng's experience in the United States. It turned out that when Hua Xiaoheng rescued Tanguerin in the United States, he really fought against the US military and the CIA on his own. He was also able to hide in the United States and secretly protect Tanguerin. And because Tanguerin didn't know Hua Xiaoheng's identity at the time, she couldn't leak the secret even if she wanted to. As for the so-called capture, it was complete nonsense. Speaker Long thought about Tanguerin's answers just now and took out the intelligence Hong Kongquan sent from the United States from the drawer. He fell into deep thought. The large office quieted down. Sunlight shone in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and dust could be seen dancing in the light. It was a peaceful atmosphere. Tanguerin wiped the sweat from her forehead and smiled sheepishly. "Miss Gu, you were too serious just now. I almost didn't know how to speak at all." "Of course not." Gunyenji smiled. "Miss Tan's thinking is clear and articulate, and her memory is so good. No wonder she plays the violin so well." Tanguerin smiled and finally relaxed. She took out a tissue from her purse to wipe the sweat from her hands and was about to continue talking to Gunyenji when she heard someone banging on Speaker Long's office door. Gunyenji turned around in surprise. "Who is this? Why aren't you using the intercom? Using a fist to knock on the door?" Speaker Long looked up unhappily and pressed the intercom on the desk. "What's going on outside?" Special Assistant Zhuang's helpless voice came through the intercom. "Speaker Long, it's Director Hong. He wants to ask if Miss Tan is in your office. He said that he came with Miss Tan and should see you together." Speaker Long frowned. "I made an appointment with Miss Tan, not Minister Hong. If Minister Hong wants to see me, arrange another time for him." This meant that Special Assistant Zhuang had to reschedule Minister Hong according to Speaker Long's schedule. Normally, Hong Kongquan would have to wait almost half a month before he could see Speaker Long. Hong Kongquan panicked when he heard that. From the moment he discovered that Tanguerin had suddenly disappeared, the sense of unease in his heart had become more and more serious. His heart was pounding and he couldn't stop himself from shouting into the intercom, "Speaker Long, I really have something urgent to see you about. This concerns the security of our country. You can't avoid it." Gunyenji heard it from inside the house. The corners of her mouth twitched. She thought to herself that this person was really a drama queen. Even at this point he still wouldn't give up. Fine, then let's try and see who was hindering the security of the country. Gunyanji wrote a few words on her notes and pushed it in front of Speaker Long. Let him in and see what he has to say. Speaker Long looked at Gunyanji, then at Tanguerin. He turned off the intercom and asked, Miss Tan, why did Director Hong say that he came with you? Did you ask him to come with you? Tanguerin quickly waved her hands. No. I met Director Hong at the entrance when I came to the Senate building this morning. He heard that I was here to see you, so he said that he was here too, so we came up together. So that was it. Speaker Long looked down at the note that Gunyanji had written for him. He thought about it and nodded. Then let him in. Gunyanji quickly got up to open the door. Hong Kongquan was yelling at Special Assistant Zhuang at the door. You're not going to open the door? Can you bear the consequences of delaying national affairs? Although Special Assistant Zhuang had a good temper, he was also angered by Hong Kongquan's attitude. He said angrily, This is the office of Speaker Long of the Senate. Everything here was a matter of national importance. Director Hong, if you keep making noise, I'm going to call the guards. Gunyanji poked her head out and quickly said, Special Assistant Zhuang, please calm down. There's no need to lower yourself to the same level as this person. Hong Kongquan turned around abruptly and saw that it was Gunyanji. He immediately became even angrier. You said there's no need to lower yourself to the same level as him? I want to see Speaker Long and you're stopping me? It's really easy to see the King of Hell but difficult to deal with. Gunyanji smiled and turned to Speaker Long in the office. Speaker Long, Director Hong said that you're the King of Hell and we're the little ones. Then what is this place? The Hall of Hell? Tanguerin couldn't help but giggle when she heard that. Special Assistant Zhuang and Speaker Long also wanted to laugh, but they quickly looked away and coughed. Speaker Long said with a smile, Nyenji, don't be naughty. Let Director Hong in. He spoke in a tone that completely treated Gunyanji like a junior. Even Hong Kongquan didn't dare to yell at her anymore. Hong Kongquan quickly glared at Gunyanji and walked in. Gunyanji thought about it and said to Special Assistant Zhuang, Special Assistant Zhuang, please come in and take notes. I helped Speaker Long take notes for a long time just now and my hands are sore. I can't deal with this big shot right now. She pouted at Hong Kongquan's back and didn't want to record anything related to this person. Special Assistant Zhuang nodded and followed her in. Speaker Long saw him come in and immediately pointed to the notes that Gunyanji had just taken. Little Zhuang, you take notes. Special Assistant Zhuang quickly walked over and sat in the seat that Gunyanji had just been sitting in. Tanguerin saw this and slowly stood up. She said to Speaker Long, Speaker Long, if there's nothing else, then I'll leave first. She originally had a good impression of Hong Kongquan. After all, he was the husband of her mommy's best friend and could be considered a close family friend. But today Hong Kongquan had used her name to disrespect Speaker Long twice, so Tanguerin was a bit unhappy. Especially when Gunyanji repeatedly emphasized that Hong Kongquan had used her name to cause trouble, which deepened Tanguerin's displeasure. Because of this, she completely lost the enthusiasm she had in the morning. She only remembered to be polite and nodded at Hong Kongquan. I'll leave now if you're busy. Wait. Hong Kongquan extended his arm to stop Tanguerin. I haven't even asked you anything yet. How can you leave? Tanguerin was taken aback. You want to ask me something? Yes, so you can't leave. In Hong Kongquan's plan, Tanguerin was the key to convicting Hu Xiaoheng. This girl didn't have a brain. She said whatever was on her mind, and as long as she said it casually, she would be able to get Hu Xiaoheng's situation in the United States. Hong Kongquan didn't believe that Hu Xiaoheng could really escape from the United States on his own. His field personnel had obtained evidence from the United States that the Wuxia imperial soldier who had gone to rescue Tanguerin had been captured by them. Hong Kongquan firmly believed that it was Hu Xiaoheng. What he needed now was the testimony of Tanguerin, the real third party, to prove that Hu Xiaoheng had been captured by the enemy when he rescued her. He didn't expect Tanguerin to be so unwilling to cooperate. Although she had a good temper and was simple-minded, not just anyone could order her around. She was also a pampered girl raised by her parents, so she could be respectful to Speaker Long. But Director Hong? Was he even worthy? This person was her father's subordinate. What right did he have to question her like that? Tanguerin raised her head. I don't want to talk to you. I want to go home. Hong Kongquan. Gunyanji suppressed her laughter and quickly spoke up for Tanguerin. Director Hong, right? Miss Tan said she doesn't want to talk to you. You can't force her. This is the Senate, not the execution room of the Secret Service. You can't torture Miss Tan to extort a confession from her. Tan Guirin was so scared that she grabbed Gun Yanji's hand. Will he take me back to torture me? Gun Yanji turned to look at Director Hong with a nervous expression. Director Hong, will you torture Miss Tan because you can't achieve your goal? Please don't. Miss Tan is a law-abiding person and has never done anything wrong. How can you be so cruel? So cruel? So heartless. Speaker Long and Special Assistant Zhuang had goosebumps listening to this string of Qiangyao sentences. They looked at each other silently and shook their shoulders at the same time. Hong Kongquan felt so disgusted that he wanted to vomit. Only Tan Guirin felt that Gun Yanji's words were very reasonable. She quickly moved closer to her and sobbed. Director Hong, you can't do this. You are the husband of my mommy's best friend. I've always treated you like an uncle. If you hadn't told my mommy to ask Major General Hua to save me, I might not have come back alive. I am indeed grateful to you, but you can't use this to threaten me. Gun Yanji silently gave Tan Guirin 3 thumbs up in her heart. It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. A reminder for the monthly and recommendation votes, dear ones. Special recommendation votes. Today is Monday, so recommendation votes are very important. Good night, dear ones. Chapter 1049. Hong Kongquan was the one who suggested that Hua Xiaoheng go to the United States to save Tan Guirin. Then Hua Xiaoheng was ambushed in America and almost lost his life. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? When Hua Xiaoheng requested to have Hong Kongquan under surveillance, he had said that it was because they had received a report, but the details could not be revealed. Could it be related to this incident? Speaker Long's eyes darkened. Although his face remained expressionless, he had secretly clenched his fists. Hong Kongquan hadn't expected Tan Guirin to know that he was the one who had been secretly egging her on behind the scenes, and she had even said it out loud. Sure enough, this girl did not have a brain and did not know the severity of the situation. How could he say such a thing? How did Kai Songyin raise her daughter? Didn't he tell her not to tell anyone about this? Or was it that in Kai Songyin's mind her daughter wasn't considered someone else? But you have to know yourself. Don't you know what kind of person your daughter is? Hong Kongquan panicked. He quickly glanced at Speaker Long to make sure that Speaker Long's expression hadn't changed, as if he hadn't understood what he was implying. He tried his best to keep his composure, not wanting Speaker Long to notice that something was wrong. He calmly changed the subject. Miss Tan, what are you talking about? When did I threaten you? I'm doing this out of kindness. Out of goodwill. Gun Yanji's heart skipped a beat. She immediately interrupted Hong Kongquan's topic and quickly brought it back to the main point. Director Hong, are you really being kind enough to suggest that Major General Hua personally go to the United States to rescue Miss Tan? Of course. Hua Xiaoheng is one of the best in the military. Who else would go if not him? Hong Kongquan replied vaguely as he silently cursed Gun Yanji for being a busybody. He didn't want Speaker Long to notice this at all. But when Gun Yanji brought it up again, he could only sneer and explain, I saw that Mrs. Tan was so anxious at the time, and I knew that the couple loved Miss Tan very much, so I gave her a little reminder. Why couldn't she? Major General Hua used to be my subordinate in the army. No one knows his abilities better than I do. I know that only he can resolve this matter satisfactorily. Gun Yanji immediately followed up and emphasized meaningfully. Really? You know Major General Hua's abilities best? So in your opinion, only he can solve the problem. Of course. Didn't the outcome prove my point? Hong Kongquan pointed at Tan Guirin. How about it? Miss Tan, am I right? Tan Guirin bit her lower lip and nodded slowly. She said hesitantly, Major General Hua did save me, but you can't take me to your execution room. She remembered what Gun Yanji had just said about the Secret Service's execution chamber. It sounded terrifying. Hong Kongquan couldn't help but glare at Gun Yanji before saying to Tan Guirin, Miss Tan, this is a misunderstanding. Why would I capture you? As you said, your mommy is my wife's best friend, and you treat me as your uncle. Why would I harm you? Tell me on your conscience, have I ever harmed you? My suggestion allowed you to return safely from the kidnappers. Isn't that enough? Tan Guirin thought it made sense and didn't know what to say. She couldn't help but glance at Gun Yanji again. She was practically following Gun Yanji's lead. Gun Yanji didn't look at Tan Guirin. Her attention was completely focused on Hong Kongquan. She was even a little excited. This person was the main culprit who had caused her and Hua Xiaoheng to almost fall apart. There was no way she would let him go. She had previously told Hua Xiaoheng about Hong Kongquan. She didn't know if Hua Xiaoheng had taken any measures, but he had actually allowed this person to pollute the environment. Gu Nianji had already made up her mind to teach Hong Kongquan a lesson in front of Speaker Long. Director Hong, these are two different things. Miss Tan didn't want to answer what you wanted to ask her just now. From your attitude, isn't it obvious that you want to take her to the Secret Service's execution chamber? Gu Nianji spoke quickly and didn't wait for Hong Kongquan to refute. She continued, that's right. You didn't say it explicitly, but your tone of voice and body movements all reflect this. Of course, after I pointed out, you won't admit it no matter what, right? Hong Kongquan was about to blurt out no, but when the words were on the tip of his tongue, he realized that if he said no, it would mean that he admitted that he wanted to take Tan Guiren to the execution chamber. He quickly wanted to change his words to yes, but if he said yes, it would mean that he wanted to take Tan Guiren to the execution chamber, but he wouldn't admit it. So no matter if he said yes or no, he would fall right into Gu Nianji's verbal trap. Hong Kongquan forcefully swallowed his words. His face turned purple and he tried his best to suppress his rage. His nostrils flared a few notches wider than usual, and he was panting heavily. He couldn't hide the ferocious look on his face. Tan Guiren only took one glance at him and was scared out of her wits. She instinctively hid behind Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji reached back and patted Tan Guiren's back to comfort her. She turned around and smiled at Hong Kongquan. Look. Just one look from you and Miss Tan is so scared that she almost wants to find a place to hide. So you still insist that you won't harm Miss Tan? At least I can't tell. Why would I harm her? It was clearly because of my suggestion that Major General Hua personally went to the United States to rescue her, and Miss Tan was able to return safely. Tell me, when did I harm her? Hong Kongquan desperately claimed that it was because of him that Tan Guiren could be safely rescued. He wanted to distract everyone's attention and not focus on what Tan Guiren had said earlier. Of course, Gu Nianji wouldn't let him have his way. She propped up her arm and lightly tapped her jade-like right cheek with one hand. She said thoughtfully, if that's the case, then what else do you have to ask? Miss Tan has already returned safely, but you still won't let her go. Aren't you threatening her to repay your kindness? I'm threatening her to repay my kindness? Hong Kongquan pointed at his thick nose. He was about to spit fire. Do I need to threaten her to repay my kindness? Don't look at people through the crack of the door, you're looking down on me. Then what do you mean by refusing to let Miss Tan go? Gu Nianji spread her hands. Other than threatening her to repay her kindness, I really can't think of any other reason. If you can think of it, then you're not just an insignificant intern. Hong Kongquan finally mocked Gu Nianji harshly. You felt great. What I want to ask Miss Tan is related to national security. How would someone like you know what's important? I see. Gu Nianji suddenly moved to the side and revealed Tan Guiren behind her. She pushed her out and encouraged her. Miss Tan, since this is related to national security, I think you have no choice but to answer. But don't be afraid. Speaker Long is here and so am I. Director Hong can ask now. Miss Tan can answer in front of all of us. Tan Guiren instinctively held Gu Nianji's hand tightly and nodded reluctantly. Director Hong, if you have something to say, just say it. I have to go back. My mommy is still waiting for me. Hong Kongquan saw that there seemed to be no other way but to ask now. Also, because of what Tan Guiren had shouted earlier, Hong Kongquan was also vaguely regretting it. He knew that Tan Guiren had a one-track mind and was very easy to get information out of. He should have thought things through before using her. Now, it was obvious that this girl had already confessed everything before anyone else could get anything out of her. But since he was already at a disadvantage, wouldn't he be at an even greater disadvantage if he didn't continue asking? Anyway, the arrow was already knocked and had to be fired. Hong Kongquan coughed and said with a serious expression, "Then let me ask you. When Major General Hua rescued you in New York, was he ambushed by the U.S. military and the CIA?" Tan Guiren nodded. Yes, but, Hong Kongquan interrupted her and immediately asked, after he was ambushed, did he escape? Yes, but, Hong Kongquan interrupted her again. After he escaped, the U.S. military and the CIA visited your house many times. Did they ask about his whereabouts? Yes, but, did you tell the U.S. military and the CIA that the person who rescued you was Major General Hua and not the kidnappers? No. This question overlapped with the one that Gu Nianji had asked about reconstructing her memory. Tan Guirin felt a sense of familiarity and quickly regained her rhythm. I didn't even know he was Major General Hua at that time. How could I tell the Americans who he was? Hong Kongquan froze and secretly cursed Hua Xiaoheng for being so cunning. He had personally gone to the United States to rescue her and had concealed his identity even in front of Tan Guirin. He had no choice but to ask from another angle. When the U.S. military and the CIA came to find you, did they encounter Major General Hua? Gun Yinji had also asked this question, but she had used slightly different words. Tan Guirin was like a student who had missed a question before a big exam. She answered quickly and well, no, every time he appeared he came and went like a ghost. They never encountered him. She then added what she remembered the most. He had his own freedom of movement, his own residence, and hid in the dark to protect me. This sentence directly blocked the rest of Hong Kongquan's words. He couldn't help but become angry and growled, "How is that possible? You're lying. The US military and the CIA were so powerful. They had so many people and such advanced weapons. How could they let him escape alone? You're lying. You're lying." "I'm not. I've never lied before." Tan Guirin was so angry that she began to cry. "You said you wanted to question me and I told you the truth. What right do you have to say that I'm lying?" Between the shrewd Hong Kongquan and the innocent Tan Guirin, anyone who heard their conversation would believe that Tan Guirin was telling the truth, and that Hong Kongquan was about to confess under torture after failing to extort a confession from her. Gun Yinji stepped forward and shielded Tan Guirin. Her expression darkened as she said to Hong Kongquan, "Director Hong, I don't understand. What do you mean by that? May I ask what point are you trying to prove?" Hong Kongquan was furious and pointed at the sobbing Tan Guirin. "Of course I want to prove that she's lying." "Miss Tan is lying? Why is she lying? Why can't I tell?" Gun Yinji shrugged and asked Special Assistant Zhuang, who had a blank expression on his face. "Secretary Zhuang, can you tell?" Special Assistant Zhuang shook his head slowly. "I'm too stupid. I can't tell that Miss Tan is lying. Isn't that right?" Gun Yinji purposely made a contemptuous expression and even snorted through her nose. She crossed her arms and looked up at the sky. "Some people just like to create something out of nothing. I created something out of nothing?" Hong Kongquan was furious. Clenching his fists, he said word by word, "Tan Guirin is lying because Hua Xiaoheng couldn't have escaped from the Americans with his own strength. He was once captured in the United States." "Ah, you finally said it." Gun Yinji put down her arms and looked down at Hong Kongquan's angry, oily face. She said coldly, Did I hear it wrong? Who was the one who said that he knew Major General Hua's abilities the best, and that the matter could only be resolved if he was personally involved?" Hong Kongquan couldn't help but take a step back. He was tongue-tied and didn't know how to respond. Gun Yinji took another step forward, her eyes sparkling. She didn't relax for even a moment. "Speak on one side. You know Major General Hua's abilities the best. Only if he is personally involved can the matter be resolved. You also said that he didn't have the ability to escape from the Americans alone. Director Hong, I really don't get it. Do you know Major General Hua's abilities and know that he can resolve the matter perfectly, but you're not satisfied with him resolving it perfectly, so you deliberately framed him for being captured and smeared his innocence? Or do you know Major General Hua's abilities and know that he can't actually escape the Americans' pursuit, so you deliberately sent him to the United States to die?" Gun Yinji's words were harsh. She simply blocked both of Hong Kongquan's paths. "Director Hong, are you trying to frame a major general of a country for treason? Or are you trying to murder a major general of a country? Choose one of these two felonies." This was the first night watch. Today was the third night watch. A reminder for the monthly votes and recommendation votes. The monthly votes were 3,300 plus updates at 1 p.m. and the third night watch was 7 p.m. P.S. Thank you to the leader of the alliance, I am Master Rashi, for the 100,000 Chidian coins yesterday. Chapter 1050. Choose one. Or falsely accuse the Major General of treason. Or attempt to murder the Major General. Let him choose one? *CK that. How imaginative. Hong Kongquan had not expected Gun Yinji to use his own words to block his path, but he would not give in. His eyes widened, his face turned purple and his teeth chattered loudly. He looked like he was on the verge of exploding in anger, but he managed to suppress it with all his might. Hong Kongquan shook his head slowly. "What a joke. Why should I choose? You really know how to accuse people. You're simply making things up out of nothing and twisting logic. You're not choosing? Gu Nianji tilted her head. That's fine too. I think both paths suit you. Hong Kong-kwan. It was clearly a choice between the two. What did she mean by suddenly throwing both paths at me? Speaker Long and Special Assistant Zhuang were speechless. Was this girl too excited? It was a choice between the two. How could both be suitable? Tang Guiran was speechless. Although she understood every word, she had no idea what Gu Nianji was talking about when they were strung together. It sounded so profound. Gu Nianji's eyes were locked on Hong Kong-chuan's face. She did not want to miss the slightest change in his expression. She stuck out her finger and made a V sign. Smiling mischievously, she said, "What's wrong? You don't believe both paths suit you?" Gu Nianji stopped smiling and said sternly, "In the beginning, you wanted Major General Hua to die and secretly planned for him to personally go to the United States to save Miss Tan. According to what you said, you knew Major General Hua's abilities the best. In your opinion, the US military and the CIA were invincible. So if Major General Hua went to the United States, he would definitely die at the hands of the Americans. That way you would have achieved your goal of murdering Major General Hua." What? You're too cunning. How could you be so evil? Tan Guiran was so angry that she forgot her own fear. She walked out from behind Gu Nianji and pointed at Hong Kong-kwan. "You're a bad person. I'm going to tell my daddy and mommy to remove you from your position." The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched. She grabbed Tan Guiran. She really wanted to tell her to wake up. "Your daddy is no longer the Prime Minister." Hong Kong-kwan sneered. "Is that so? But Major General Hua came back alive. Are you still going to make me the scapegoat?" "Yes, Major General Hua came back alive, so your first plan didn't work, so you came up with another plan. This time you want Major General Hua's reputation to be ruined. You want him to suffer a fate worse than death by framing him as a prisoner of war and committing treason." Gu Nianji calmly analyzed. "Next, you chose the second option and falsely accused a major general of being captured for treason." Speaker Long's heart sank and he suddenly felt so sad that he couldn't speak. Special Assistant Zhuang's eyes widened in shock as he looked at Gu Nianji. He really wanted to remind her not to say everything at this time. After all, this wasn't a courtroom. Gu Nianji smiled at him as if she had a card up her sleeve. Hong Kong-chuan's heart was pounding. Ever since he found out that the AI program he had planted in the Special Operations Force's surveillance software had been discovered, he had felt a sense of urgency. However, he had imagined many scenarios in which he would be exposed, but none of them were him being brought down by two unknown little girls. He refused to accept this. Hong Kong-kwan continued to sneer and maintained his fearless posture. "Gu Nianji, I heard that you are a top student in the B University Faculty of Law. Is this what you do as a lawyer? You want to convict a suspect without evidence." "Oh, no evidence?" Gu Nianji smiled faintly. "Then what you mean is that my logical inference is valid, but there is no evidence to prove my logical inference at the moment. Okay, thank you for your reminder. Next, we will be looking for evidence." At this point, Hong Kong-kwan could no longer hold on any longer. "What nonsense. I have nothing better to do than to listen to a little girl like you spout nonsense." Hong Kong-kwan pretended to be very angry and turned to leave. "Stop." Speaker Long called out to him. "Director Hong, please wait." Hong Kong-kwan stopped in his tracks and seemed to be struggling internally. After a while, he turned around with a stiff smile on his face and asked awkwardly, "Speaker Long, is there anything else?" "I should be the one asking you that." Speaker Long stood there majestically. "You came to my office and wanted to see me without an appointment. You even dragged Miss Tan to ask questions. What is the meaning of this? What was the meaning of this? Of course it was to bring Hua Xiaoheng down in one fell swoop. But now that he had been beaten black and blue by Gu Nianji, he was scared witless and had completely lost the aggressive attitude he had when he first arrived." Hong Kong-kwan stammered a few words before saying, "I just wanted to ask about Major General Hua's situation in New York. Miss Tan explained it clearly and everything will be fine." "Everything will be fine? Major General Hua will be fine, but you, Director Hong, are not." As Speaker Long spoke, he pressed a button on the desk with one hand. "Speaker Long, what do you mean?" Hong Kong-chuan's expression changed when he saw Speaker Long's action. That button was the button to summon the military police of the Senate building. "What I mean is very simple. Hong Kong-kwan, you remove all temporary duties and explain the problem at the specified time and place. Wait for the organization's investigation." Speaker Long was very direct. In order to make up for his previous mistake, he decided to immediately execute it. "No. You can't do this to me. Hong Kong didn't expect the good old Speaker Long to act so decisively one day. I am the Minister of the Cabinet. You have no right to detain me. No, the cabinet has already been dissolved. You are only the temporary minister. Speaker Long understood the government's procedures much better than Hong Kong. Before the new cabinet is formed, you are only acting as the cabinet's authority. So Hong Kong, I old Long have the right to detain you. Hong Kong bared his teeth and calmly glanced at the faces of the people in the office. Speaker Long was old, Special Assistant Zhuang was physically weak, and the two delicate young girls were nothing to worry about. If he were to take Speaker Long hostage, but as soon as this thought came up, he suppressed it. No, it wasn't time to fight to the death yet. He still had a chance. Hong Kong thought of the amazing person who could help him and the promise he made to him. His heart relaxed and he temporarily gave up resisting. Of course, the most important thing was that he also knew that even if he could take Speaker Long hostage, would he be able to walk out of the Senate building? He would probably be shot in the head by a sniper before he could even walk out the door. He stood motionless in Speaker Long's office and lowered his head to show his submission and obedience. Soon, the military police of the Senate arrived and searched Hong Kong's body according to Speaker Long's instructions. They found a handgun and a military dagger on him. These weapons were clearly not allowed in the Senate building. Speaker Long, Special Assistant Zhuang, and Gu Nianji all broke out in a cold sweat and looked at each other. Tan Guirin was the only one who didn't know how dangerous the situation was. She patted her chest and said, "That's great. Can I leave now?" She was anxious to tell her father and mother what had happened here. Gu Nianji glanced at Speaker Long and saw him nod slightly. She turned to Tan Guirin and said, "Miss Tan, I will walk you out." Tan Guirin's impression of Gu Nianji increased because she had protected her in front of Hong Kong. As Gu Nianji walked Tan Guirin out of the Senate building, Speaker Long called General Ji. He briefly explained what had happened today and then said sincerely, "Old Ji, please apologize to Xiaoheng on my behalf. I made him suffer this time." General Ji, on the other hand, was so happy after hearing Speaker Long describe what Gu Nianji had done. He casually said a few words to Speaker Long and went to the isolation room, where Xiaoheng was staying. He smiled and said, "Xiaoheng, you don't have to be grounded anymore." Xiaoheng looked up from the computer and raised his eyebrows. "I'm grounded now?" He casually glanced at the room that was comparable to a luxury suite in a five-star hotel. General Ji was a bit angry. "I said you're grounded, so you're grounded. Even if you stay in a five-star hotel, you're still grounded." Xiaoheng smirked and nodded slowly. "All right, I'm in solitary confinement. You dare to brush me off." General Ji was unhappy. "You're lucky to have found a good wife, so you didn't have to be grounded. But your attitude towards the leader just now was improper, so I've decided to keep you grounded." Xiaoheng was speechless. "You don't understand, do you?" General Ji said and vividly repeated what Speaker Long had just said to him. He also said, "I'm going to the Senate building to watch the surveillance footage now. I want to see how Nianji took down Hong Kong without any bloodshed. You can continue to be grounded here." It was the second night, and the monthly votes had been delivered to him at 3,300 plus one night. It was the third night today. A reminder for the monthly votes and recommendation votes. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, the third night. Chapter 1051. Nianji had taken down Hong Kong without a fight? Xiaoheng felt his heart skip a beat. His hand that was holding the mouse froze as he looked up at General Ji. General Ji arrogantly called an orderly in front of him and ordered loudly as if to piss him off. "Hurry up and prepare the car. I want to go to the Senate building immediately." "He's already so old, yet he's still playing this game," Xiaoheng sneered at him in his heart, but he had no choice but to bow down when he was under someone else's roof. He exited the program, turned off the computer and stood up straight. He said calmly, "General Ji, I will escort you to the Senate building." "You?" General Ji pursed his lips with a look of disapproval. "Forget it, I'm not that lucky. I'll ask you, Major General Hua, to escort me to the Senate building." "You're very lucky." Xiaoheng's expression didn't change. He walked over to take General Ji's military cap from the coat rack and presented it with both hands. "I'll be your driver. Think about it, it's been chaotic lately. You're the pillar of our nation and the backbone of the military. If anything happens to you, how am I supposed to answer to the soldiers of the three armies?" The orderly's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets as he watched. He had seen Hua Xiaoheng's cold and stern demeanor, and he had also seen Hua Xiaoheng's calm and collected demeanor. However, he had never seen Hua Xiaoheng flatter without batting an eyelid. General Ji was all smiles as he listened. He patted Hua Xiaoheng's shoulder. "Xiaoheng, I love it when you can't stand me, yet you have no choice but to flatter me." Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. The orderly replied, "QAQ. I'm blind and deaf. I have no idea what these two senior officials are trying to say." Of course, General Ji wouldn't let Hua Xiaoheng be his driver. Coming out of the military compound, Hua Xiaoheng and General Ji sat together in the back seat of his private car. The driver was General Ji's orderly for many years and was already a lieutenant colonel. The two of them got into the car and their expressions became serious. "Xiaoheng, what do you think is going on with the incident with Hong Kongquan?" General Ji voiced his concern. Old Long said the same thing. "Although he has a motive, we can't convict him without any evidence." Even when Hong Kongquan instigated Kai Songyin and Tan Dongbang to ask Hua Xiaoheng to personally go to the United States, they didn't have any concrete evidence to prove that Hong Kongquan had anything to do with Hua Xiaoheng's experience in the United States. "Where do you think we're going to find evidence?" General Ji muttered to himself. However, Hua Xiaoheng knew that the evidence was in the surveillance software. However, after being busy for a few days, he was still searching for the hidden data because the computer he used in General Ji's detention room was not powerful enough. If he didn't need to be grounded, it would be much faster for him to return to the central control room of the Special Operations Forces headquarters. Of course, what he was most interested in now was how Gu Nianji had managed to take down Hong Kongquan without any bloodshed. Therefore, in response to General Ji's question, Hua Xiaoheng only replied calmly, "As long as you look for the evidence, there will always be it. Temporarily monitoring him and not allowing him to move freely is also the right choice." It was rare for Speaker Long to act so decisively, so he should spare no effort in praising him. "Of course, only he can ground you, but we can't ground him?" General Ji was still very unhappy. "What do you think Hong Kongquan is thinking? Back when he was in the army, he was also an outstanding military talent. Xiaoheng, I'll say something you don't like to hear, but if he had agreed to take over and establish the Special Operations Forces back then, you wouldn't have had anything to do with it." Hua Xiaoheng grunted. "That's how it should be. At that time I was still under his command, so of course I had to follow the leader's orders. Then he would probably be in the same position as Zhao Liangzi and Yin Shixiang now. At most he would be a colonel. It would be impossible for him to become a major general at such a young age. However, there were no ifs in this world. In reality, he was the one who established the Special Operations Forces and achieved his dreams. He was also the one who protected the interests of the country and the military." General Ji sighed and ordered Hua Xiaoheng to find evidence as soon as possible to bring Hong Kongquan to justice. It was a pity that Hong Kongquan had already retired from the military. Otherwise, he would have been tried directly in a military court. That was the fate he deserved. The two of them arrived at the Senate building. Speaker Long was waiting for them at the door of his office. Seeing General Ji and Hua Xiaoheng walk over one after another, Speaker Long was both surprised and happy. He extended his hand to General Ji. "Old Ji, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." General Ji shook Speaker Long's hand proudly and said with a smile, "Old Long, I was right, wasn't I? Xiaoheng would never do anything that would betray the country or the people." "Yes, Old Ji. You really have a better eye than I do." Speaker Long was truly convinced this time. "However, don't be too smug. I found a better successor. I will train her carefully, and when the time comes, let's compete to see who's the better successor." General Ji said. "Successor? Oh. Gu Nianji." Speaker Long happily opened the door to his office and invited them in. "Come, sit down. Let's watch the surveillance footage." After a long time, they chose the surveillance footage from the best angle and played it on the large curved screen on the wall. Speaker Long chose the surveillance footage from the beginning when he asked Tan Guoren. Of course, it was mainly Gu Nianji who asked. When Hua Xiaoheng saw Gu Nianji tirelessly brainwash Tan Guoren over and over again, a huge weight was lifted off his shoulders. Tan Guoren knew a little about what happened in the United States, and it wasn't as if Hua Xiaoheng hadn't been worried. That was probably the only loophole he had. If Tan Guoren revealed anything about James, he would really be in deep trouble. He didn't expect Gu Nianji to help him close the loophole in advance. This way, no matter who tried to trick Tan Guoren to frame Hua Xiaoheng in the future, they would only be asking for humiliation and realizing that they had shot themselves in the foot. Hua Xiaoheng looked at the large curved screen in front of him with an almost obsessive expression. He couldn't hear General Ji and Speaker Long whispering beside him, nor could he see the two of them exchanging flirtatious glances. All he could see was the girl on the screen who seemed to glow as she spoke with confidence and assurance. His girl is Nianji. As soon as he thought of this name, his cold expression instantly became unbelievably gentle. Gradually, General Ji and Speaker Long also stopped talking because Gu Nianji's concluding speech to Hong Kongquan had already begun playing on the large curved screen. Yes, Major General Hua came back alive, so your first plan didn't work, so you came up with another plan. This time, you wanted Major General Hua's reputation to be ruined and used the crime of framing him as a prisoner of war and committing treason to make him suffer a fate crueler than death. Gu Nianji calmly analyzed. Next, you chose the second path and falsely accused a major general of being captured and committing treason. Well said. General Ji applauded. Well said. This Nianji is getting more and more powerful. Old Long, I regret it now. I want to compete with you for this rare talent. Are you serious? Compete for what? How is Xiaoheng supposed to feel when you say this? Speaker Long intentionally brought up Hua Xiaoheng. Look, his eyes are red after hearing what you said. Oh. General Ji turned around abruptly but saw that Hua Xiaoheng was already looking at him as if nothing had happened. What are the two chiefs talking about? The sandstorm is too strong. Sand got into my eyes just now. It was the third watch. It was the third watch today. A reminder for our monthly and recommendation votes. Chapter 1052. Sandstorm? They were in an office. And it was the largest office on the top floor of the most luxurious Senate building in the imperial capital. Where did the sandstorm come from? However, Speaker Long and General Ji instantly understood Hua Xiaoheng's meaning, but the two considerate old men didn't expose him. Speaker Long even said with a smile, Sandstorm? Didn't the sandstorm in the imperial capital a long time ago? Now that there are no sandstorms, you might as well say it's because of the smog. Xiaoheng, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you can't even tell a lie. General Ji wouldn't allow his beloved general to be criticized, so he immediately shouted, This is my soldier's sincerity. He doesn't lie. He's not like a member of the Senate. He can't speak if he doesn't lie every day. Watch your words. We don't lie every day. Speaker Long's face darkened and he wanted to call Gu Nianji in to argue with General Ji. No, of course you guys don't lie every day. Ha ha ha. General Ji had won a complete victory and was in a good mood. He took the opportunity to joke around with Speaker Long and Speaker Long. He didn't want to embarrass Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng wasn't embarrassed. In fact, he quickly calmed down and smiled to congratulate Speaker Long. It wasn't easy, but you finally found a qualified successor. Of course. Speaker Long was very proud. She's too young and still needs to be tempered. But she'll be with me and I'll educate her well. She'll be successful soon. Thank you, Hua Xiaoheng said very sincerely as if he was Gu Nianji's parent. Speaker Long narrowed his eyes. Xiaoheng, tell me the truth. Did you break up with Nianji? Are you still lovers? Hua Xiaoheng paused. We broke up but we're not lovers. But, he quickly said, I'm planning to pursue her again. Speaker Long was speechless. Damn it. He suddenly felt like the little fox he worked so hard to trick was about to be taken away by a wolf. Speaker Long said angrily, Nianji is only 19 years old and just graduated with a master's. She should focus on her career. Major General Hua, you have a high position and you're much older than Nianji. I think it's better for you to find someone else. He added, don't hold our Nianji back. General Ji was dumbfounded. He opened and closed his mouth several times, but in the end he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. He smiled and said, Old Long, this is between the two of them. Are you in charge of heaven and earth, or are you in charge of other people's relationships and children? Even if Nianji is your biological daughter, you can't stop her from getting married, can you? Besides, you're just her boss. Be careful of Nianji's rebuke if you meddle too much. Gu Nianji's eloquence would definitely make you question your life. General Ji was smiling happily. Speaker Long's eyes flashed. I will reason with Nianji. You don't have to worry about that. As he spoke, he looked Hua Xiaoheng up and down, as if afraid that he would immediately kidnap Gu Nianji and start chasing him away. Do you have nothing better to do? The interim general election will be held in 4 days. The Special Operations Forces will be in charge of monitoring, so you can't let your guard down. Alright, I won't keep you any longer. Hurry up and get to work. The nation is waiting for you to protect it. Don't come to the Senate to watch videos for no reason. General Ji was speechless. Wu Xiaoheng put his hands in his trouser pockets. His posture was relaxed, and his tall body was as straight as a pine tree. I'm going to the surveillance room to check on the progress. As he spoke, he turned around and left. Seeing that Wu Xiaoheng had left, Speaker Long breathed a sigh of relief. He said to General Ji, "You should also watch your beloved general. The way he looks at my disciple is like a wolf. It's scary." In the blink of an eye, Gu Nianji had been promoted to disciple. He didn't even ask if she was willing to be his disciple. General Ji thought about the true relationship between Gu Nianji and Wu Xiaoheng, but he couldn't use it to slap Speaker Long's smug old face. He suddenly felt very tired, but what could he do? He had already promised Wu Xiaoheng not to tell anyone, so he could only choose to forgive him. General Ji nodded perfunctorily. "All right, you keep an eye on Hong Kong, Quan. I'm going back." During the interim general election, the previous cabinet will still be in power. As the speaker, you'll have to work hard for a few days. When the new prime minister is elected and the cabinet is formed, you can relax. Speaker Long agreed and asked Special Assistant Zhuang to send General Ji out. Wu Xiaoheng arrived at the temporary surveillance room where Yin Shixiang was. The staff of the Special Operations Forces immediately came over to salute him. "Hello, Chief." Wu Xiaoheng raised his hand and asked them to return to their posts. He slowly walked to the surveillance screen and said to Yin Shixiang, "Where are the surveillance cameras inside the building?" Yin Shixiang pointed to a few screens. "These are the internal surveillance cameras. Download the surveillance footage from Speaker Long's office this morning and send it to the Special Operations Forces email for archiving." Wu Xiaoheng put on white gloves and looked at his watch. He asked casually, "Which floor is Nianji on?" "Nianji is in the secretariat. She should be on the 6th floor." Yin Shixiang adjusted the surveillance to the floor of the secretariat as he spoke. He first looked at the lobby cubicle that Gu Nianji used to be in, but it was empty. There didn't seem to be anyone there. Did she move somewhere else? Yin Shixiang scratched his head in confusion. He turned on his Bluetooth headset and contacted the people in the secretariat of the Senate building. He asked, "Have there been any personnel changes in the secretariat recently? Like moving an office or something?" The person on the other end asked about personnel arrangements and then said to Yin Shixiang, "There has been a personnel change. It's the new intern Miss Gu. Her office area has been moved to the small office on the south side. It's a separate room because she will be handling legal matters. It's not convenient for her to work in the lobby cubicle." "Oh, got it." Yin Shixiang hung up and said to Wu Xiaoheng, "Nianji has her own independent office." As he spoke, Yin Shixiang followed the direction the person told him and found Gu Nianji's office. The office wasn't actually small, but half the wall was glass so people outside could see what the people in the office were doing. It wasn't very private. The surveillance footage showed Gu Nianji tidying up the things on her desk with her head down. From their angle, they could only see the top of Gu Nianji's head. Her smooth black hair hung down her back like a black waterfall. Wu Xiaoheng looked for a long time and said, "She's lost weight." Yin Shixiang. "Oh my." Wu Xiao was too amazing. He could tell if she was fat or thin just by looking at the top of her head. Although Yin Shixiang had a million words in his mind, he didn't dare to say a word. He chuckled and said, "She's lost weight, she's lost weight? Even the top of her head is smaller." Wu Xiaoheng glanced at him. "Did you rewrite your marriage report?" Yin Shixiang. "That hurt my heart." "Wu Xiao, your butcher knife really stabbed where it hurt." Yin Shixiang stopped smiling and sat down quietly. "Wu Xiao, I have to work. I'll rewrite the marriage report after the interim election." Wu Xiaoheng nodded and patted him on the shoulder. "Work hard. When the interim election is over, I'll ask for credit for both of you." *CK. He could get credit just by monitoring the election. Yin Shixiang was immediately overjoyed. His gloomy mood was swept away and his voice became lighter. "Don't worry, Chief. We will complete the mission perfectly." Wu Xiaoheng smiled and went to check the other positions one by one before leaving the temporary surveillance room and walking steadily to the secretariat on the 6th floor. He didn't know if Speaker Long did it on purpose or not. Wu Xiaoheng had just arrived in front of Gu Nianji's single office on the secretariat floor when Gu Nianji received an internal call from Speaker Long. He said he had important work arrangements and asked her to go over. Gu Nianji hurriedly packed up her files and turned around. She saw Wu Xiaoheng through the transparent glass wall. He was wearing a crisp green military uniform and stood ramrod straight in front of her office door. His military cap was pressed low on his head. He looked at her quietly from under the brim of the cap. His gaze was deep, and as soon as he saw her turn around, a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. It was like sunlight breaking through the haze and warmed her from head to toe. Hua Xiaoheng saw Gu Nianji standing elegantly in the office behind the glass wall. She wore a simple and elegant white silk shirt, tailored black skinny pants and pointed black high heels. The hem of her shirt was tucked into her belt, accentuating her slender waist. He wasn't wrong. She had indeed lost weight. This was the first watch. It was still the third watch. My friend's monthly votes and recommendation votes were too awesome. There's nothing more to say. I'll keep watching until the monthly votes are paid back. Monthly votes at 1 p.m. and 3,600 yuan will be added for the third watch at 7 p.m. P.S. Roller coaster, it's not over yet. Kitty is super fierce. JPG_, are you guys scared? Chapter 1053. Gu Nianji turned around and saw Hua Xiaoheng. Her first reaction was to think that she was hallucinating. After all, Hua Xiaoheng shouldn't be here at this time and place, right? Wasn't he on a mission? Did he come back after completing the mission? Gu Nianji had no idea that because of Hong Kongquan, Hua Xiaoheng had already been put into confinement. If it wasn't for General Ji's insistence to protect him, even if Hua Xiaoheng were to clear his name, his career would have ended there. What Gu Nianji had done for him was to cut off his future troubles. He no longer had to worry about anyone using the American operation to smear his name and force him to retire from the army. The smile on Hua Xiaoheng's face grew wider as he looked at Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji blinked and opened the door to look at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiao? Are you really back? Yes, I'm back. You came to see me as soon as you came back from a mission? Gu Nianji's eyes lit up, and her entire face lit up. At that moment, Hua Xiaoheng felt that it was a pity that there were surveillance cameras everywhere. Otherwise, he would have pulled her into his arms and made love to her. He sighed internally and maintained a safe distance from Gu Nianji. He asked dryly, "Are you very busy working here?" Gu Nianji shook her head in surprise. "I'm not busy. I just came to work and you haven't given me a job yet." "Why do you ask?" "So you haven't recovered from your injuries?" Hua Xiaoheng continued to ask. "You've lost a lot of weight." "I lost weight." Gu Nianji touched her face full of joy. "That's great. You don't have to lose weight." His brows furrowed in displeasure. "Lose weight? Don't even think about it." "Gu Nianji, if you want to lose weight, I think you can start doing the 5-kilometer weight-bearing cross-country run every morning." This wasn't the place to talk. Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch. "I'll look for you tonight to talk about losing weight." With that, he nodded slightly at her and turned to leave. Gu Nianji watched Hua Xiaoheng's tall silhouette as he walked away. She covered her chest with her hand and secretly smiled. Hugging the folder, she walked to Speaker Long's office. She was in an unprecedentedly good mood. The nervousness and uneasiness of the past few days were all soothed at this moment. She knew that it was very rare for someone like Hua Xiaoheng, who spent most of his time and energy on the military, to be able to behave like he did today. Gu Nianji practically hummed a song as she arrived at Speaker Long's office. Special Assistant Zhuang stood at the door with a worried frown. When he heard her humming a strange melody, he couldn't help but relax his frown and ask with a smile, "Are you singing?" "What song?" "Sounds pretty good." Gu Nianji smiled and said, "Insects Fly." "It's a children's song." Special Assistant Zhuang. Pushing open the door to Speaker Long's office, Special Assistant Zhuang nodded. "Come in." He followed Gu Nianji into Speaker Long's office and closed the door behind them. The two of them walked to Speaker Long's desk and stood still. "Speaker Long, what can I do for you?" Speaker Long pointed to the two soft stools in front of him. "Sit down. I do have something to discuss." Gu Nianji and Special Assistant Zhuang sat down, and they both saw a printed email on the table in front of Speaker Long. Gu Nianji's eyes were sharp and could already see that it was an email in English. The header was very familiar. It was the logo of the U.S. Congress. She had interned at the U.S. Congress for half a year, so she remembered the official document format very well. Speaker Long glanced at her. "Nianji, you know what this is, right?" Since Gu Nianji had come to the Senate Secretariat as an intern, she must have had her background checked. Speaker Long also knew about her internship experience at the U.S. Congress. Gu Nianji quickly nodded. "This is an email from the U.S. Congress?" "Yes." Speaker Long nodded approvingly. "Nianji, I know that you interned at the U.S. Congress. This is a great advantage for our work. You must make full use of this advantage and help us with our work." Of course. Gunyanji agreed. What do you need me to do? Here's the thing. Speaker Long printed 2 copies of the email and gave one to Gunyanji and one to Special Assistant Zhuang. The President of the U.S. Senate sent me an email to protest, saying that our country launched a cyber war against the United States and caused great damage to U.S. national property. Gunyanji, was this not over yet? Gunyanji secretly frowned. Special Assistant Zhuang also expressed his confusion. What's going on? Since it's a cyber war, then it's a confrontation between 2 armies. They should blame it on their bad luck if they lose. What are they trying to do? Gunyanji was someone who had experienced the entire cyber war that night. She had also hacked into the Skull and Bones Society server and placed a Trojan horse virus in the Americans' download files. No one knew better than Gunyanji how much the United States had lost this time. But knowing was one thing, was she really going to walk right into the trap and beg for forgiveness? Gunyanji flicked the email and raised her eyebrows. Let them protest then. Let's ignore them. Reading their emails was already giving them face. How could a defeated general speak of bravery? Speaker Long was amused by Gunyanji and Special Assistant Zhuang. He shook his head and covered his mouth to cough. If it was only the U.S. Senate that sent me a letter, I could indeed ignore it. But they not only mobilized the Senate, but also the U.S. government's Department of Justice and the U.S. military. Gunyanji, Special Assistant Zhuang? This is an email from the Speaker of the U.S. Senate, protesting that our cyber war has caused huge losses to their national interests. They reserve the right to seek compensation, Speaker Long said meaningfully. Speaker Long said meaningfully, also, I just learned that the U.S. military sent a protest email to our Supreme Commander of the Army, General G, demanding that we compensate the United States for their losses. They also promised not to engage in cyber warfare against the United States under any circumstances. Gunyanji was speechless. How could they have the cheek to make such a shameless request? Speaker Long laughed. Countries never talked about face, only interests. Compensation for losses? Special Assistant Zhuang was also unsettled. He was more sensitive to numbers. How do we define the value of the losses? Of course it's an astronomical figure. Speaker Long folded his hands over the email from the U.S. Senate, his expression solemn. The U.S. Department of Justice also sent an email to our temporary cabinet. In the name of the United States, they named and filed a lawsuit against 27 soldiers from our country, accusing these people of stealing important technical information from the secret organization of the United States military. They asked our country to send these 27 soldiers to the United States for trial. Gunyanji was shocked. 27 soldiers. This number was so familiar. It was exactly the same number of Special Operations Forces personnel who had conducted a cyber counterattack with Gunyanji and Hua Xiaoheng in the central control room that night. If it was really the 27 Special Operations Forces personnel in the central control room that night, where did the United States get this information from? It was the second night watch, and the monthly ticket for 3,600 plus the second night watch had arrived. It was still the third night watch. It was the third night watch at 7 p.m. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.